You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
What's that?
30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes.
Okay.
All right. All righty, everybody. We are back. We are live from the Raleigh Expo for day 3, part 2. If you want to come on out, it is absolutely packed here, probably because of the weather that we had earlier in the week. But allegedly, the weather is great because I've been inside all day. So I'm going to say the weather has been great. The roads are fantastic. Come on out and see us. I have 2 fantastic guests with us right here now. And why don't you guys just introduce yourselves?
Yeah, my name is James. I'm the president of Hillsboro Sports Fishing Club. And I'm also a retired probation officer out of Gifford County, North Carolina, which is Greensboro.
Awesome.
And I'm Joel Elliott, also from Hillsboro, affiliated with the Hillsboro Sports Fishing Club. And we're both board members. James is the president, I'm the secretary. And anyway, we're here. We come to the Expo, been coming for years, and promoting the club as best we can as well.
So, I mean, who would like to go first on how they got started with the club?
Well, the club's been in existence for years, early 2000s, James?
2000, yeah, about 2000.
And we used to sponsor an annual fishing tournament, and it sort of evolved into a fishing club. And then the last 2 or 3 years, we've sort of reorganized, and we're still kind of small and growing and rethinking some of our goals and our mission, and we've repurposed and we're ready to get going, and we're excited about the directions we're going the next year.
Oh yeah, and like I say, we're like, doing things differently now. It's a great club. It's really a great club. I like meeting people. Joining the club. I mean, I was kind of had second thoughts about joining the club, but now that I've joined, man, I've met some great people. I've learned a lot. I've learned more by attending club meetings and having not sponsors, but having different charters that come by, speak with different captains. I've learned a lot just by joining the Hillsboro Sport Fishing Club.
How does the structure of the club work? Is it a couple of meetings and then you go fishing as a club once a month? Like, how does the structure work?
Well, what we normally do is we meet every first Wednesday of the month. Unless, maybe every now and then we may schedule a meeting like on a Thursday or a different day of the week, according to the captain's schedule. As long as the captain can do a Wednesday, that's our normal, I would say our normal meet days, the first Wednesday of every month.
It's 7 p.m. is our meeting time, but some of us show up early and we love to eat. So fishing is what we love to do, but one of my favorite hobbies is food. So fishing and food. We love to fish, but if we can't fish, we love talking about fishing and eating. Our short little motto is fishing, fellowship, community. So we love to fish, and first and foremost, that's why we're together and what we do. But especially winter, we don't fish as much as in the winter. We do some, but it's always great to get together with the club and eat, and then bring a guest speaker in. Captain Wayne from the Carolina Princess was at our last meeting.
Oh, nice.
We meet at the Eflin-Ruritan Club, which is sort of West Orange County, East Alamance County area. So a lot of area people from Hillsboro,
Hillsboro. I'm from Burlington. Burlington, Graham. And we met some people here from Durham, which they may want to come and join the club as well. So
we have a lot of conversations. We've been having a lot of conversations with people from Durham. Durham is kind of a fishing desert.
Really,
there are a lot of people that love to fish in the sense of grew up fishing, but there's no tackle shops. There's no organized fishing club or community in the Durham area. So that's an opportunity. And we've been doing more information. In the past, we've done a lot of fundraisers like fish fries and stuff. We're trying to do more information, like at the Hog Day at Hillsboro. We had an information booth. One thing we discovered at the Raleigh Sport Fishing Club also had similar conversations and is doing similar things. Lots of families with young kids that want to go fishing, put your iPhone down and go fishing, and we're trying to sort of focus on that this year and do like a fishing 101 clinic where if we can get the sponsorship, we hope we can get families with young kids to sign up and get some basic fishing gear and basic instruction from how to tie knots to what kind of gear to use and things like that. Just an alternative for an opportunity to do something other than like surfing the internet on your iPhone. A way to whatever, I guess a common phrase is to touch grass. Go outside. Put your phone down.
Yeah, put your phone down.
How has fishing evolved in the area over the years? Has it changed a lot in the Carolina area?
Well, there's a lot of us are gearheads, so there's always that. But fundamentally, I'm not sure. I wonder about the social dynamics of fishing. For example, a lot of people in our generation and earlier grew up getting access to private ponds. And everybody said, I love to pond fish. And as you can imagine, that's not simple to do anymore. So in some ways, especially with parents with kids, it might be challenging to find opportunities and venues to take your kids fishing. And I guess one of the things we would like to do is provide more, like for example, in our area, what are local fishing opportunities? And there's some out there, but they're not necessarily well known. Like what's that? Graham Mebane Lake is a great place. They'll loan you gear, and in Orange County, the Owasso Lakes, University Lake and Cane Creek, both rent boats. Where a limited time from like March through October or so, you can go fishing there. And they also, I know Cane Creek has a dock where one can just fish from the dock. So it might be a great place to start with a young kid, getting them into fishing.
Yeah, I would say the same thing Joe said. It's not, back in the day, you could pretty much just go anywhere. Now you got a lot of limitations of where you can go.
Really?
You got a lot of people owning ponds now. To me, I think it's like more liability now versus it is like back in the day. It's a lot more liability. It's a lot more risk. So I think that has a lot to do with a lot of changes from back in the day to now.
I grew up in farm country too before it got developed. And that's the thing where you could knock on a door literally and go fish. And now it's like, well, we can't have people on the property, or they build a stupid vineyard or something like that and take over the pond and slap a no fishing sign.
And even like with saltwater, like back in the day, you could just have saltwater. Didn't have no license. You need no license for saltwater.
Wow.
Now you got to have saltwater license, and you can have freshwater license. And then if you back in the day, if you lived within the county, you didn't have to have a license for that particular county that you lived in. Now it's like you gotta have a license for everything now. Even with the fish, the limitations and on the fishes has changed as well. So you got to be of knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, it's a good line of questioning, because it's like those of us who've been fishing a long time, we've been keeping up and don't think about it. But if you're a young parent with kids and you don't fish and your kid's interested, there's probably way more to learn. And so partly
where
what we'd like
go?
to
Are there places still around here where if a mom wanted to take their son or daughter to go hit a pond, is there a place that allows bank fishing around here?
Yes, I mean there are some. Like I mentioned, the Graham Mebane Lake, the Owasso Lakes. There's some places at the coast that have piers. I think the Raleigh Sport Fishing Club took a group down to the Radio Island Pier. It would be really helpful for those families to have a sort of an organized way of seeing all the opportunities, and we want to help with that. Find that information, organize it, sort of edit it in such a way that they could at a glance find something close to them.
Awesome.
Yeah, like I said, I had an ex-co-worker. She has a son, and they went out to Randaman Dam, and I guess the son kind of sort of got upset because he couldn't catch any fish.
Yeah.
So maybe he had somebody with more experience.
Yeah.
Because he liked worms, like live bait, artificial bait, and could help her in a lot of different ways to catch fish. But he's still interested. So I kind of when I contacted her, I was trying to find out what is it that we as a club could do during hopefully our one-on-one fishing clinic that's going to come along soon. How we can use what she told me to help other kids as well. you know, to actually get into fishing. You know, and I was looking at a fishing show on YouTube the other day, and one of the guys took a prisoner out to fishing. And I mean, man, and the prisoner had never been fishing before. He loved it.
Wow.
He loved it. So, and in turn, just taking a kid out fishing that has never done it before, has never actually caught a fish, you know, I think that could be a turnaround for some of the kids nowadays versus playing video games. Okay, Mom, let's go out here and go fishing. Get them outside, you know, get them outside the house. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think, you know, fishing is a great thing, you know. So,
yeah, and make sure they catch fish.
Yeah.
And push the barbs down on your hooks.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea, not essential, but yeah, if you were living at the coast, man, you could do a lot worse than just take a sabiki rig, tip it with shrimp, and just catch. We've done that before. Right. Get your kid to just catch. What do you call them? Pinfish all day. You know, man, you can. One of our club members had a son when he was young. That's what we used to do. He'd catch bait for us, but it was, man, he had the greatest time, and you always caught fish. But yeah, we need to find good local freshwater alternatives, and you know, starting with live bait's not a bad idea. You increase your odds. You want them to catch fish because you want them to have a positive experience. My son didn't take to fishing, and in a moment of candor, he said, "Well, Dad, 99% of the time you're not catching anything." I was like, "Well, factually, I guess that's true, but so to get kids interested, if you could increase the odds of them actually catching, that would be great. So we're going to try our best to do that."
And is your club? And this is good to know. Is your club specifically bass? Is it saltwater? What do you guys like to pursue?
Well, we do a little bit. When we have like a lot of our members, I guess we a combination of both.
Okay.
We have some members that love fresh and saltwater fishing, just like me myself. I mean, I will freshwater fish, but my heart is saltwater. But I have taken my boat to these local lakes. Crappie Fish, a couple of other members that have smaller boats. I've been invited going with them fishing. Actually, one of my club members, I did my first camping trip with him.
That's so
you know,
cool.
if I had never joined the club, I would never did my first camping trip. And man, we caught gray trout, not gray trout, but we caught trouts. I don't know what kind they were, but we had a ball.
Yeah, a lot of us have spent a lot of time freshwater fishing. I grew up bass fishing, kayak fishing. So, and then I'm very clued into the local. We're in the Triangle area. So, for example, in the spring, there's a white bass run in some of the rivers, the Hall River, the New Hope Creek, the Eno River. You know, that are great opportunities. There's a shad fishery in the eastern rivers. It's not that far away in terms of a drive. There's the striped bass run on the Roanoke, which is it's realistic to make a day trip and fish the Roanoke and be back in the Triangle by the evening. So communicating those regional and local possibilities is part of what we do. But a lot of us love to saltwater fish, and I in particular have fished the Crystal Coast area, kayak fishing, inshore fishing, and now have gotten into offshore fishing. But we're also looking at opportunities to do it in an affordable way. With offshore fishing and affordability don't always go together.
No.
So we do a lot of headboat fishing, for example, which is really cool. I mean, there are numerous headboats, but a lot of us have used the Carolina Princess out of Moorhead a lot. There's the Captain Stacy in Atlantic Beach. It's a great opportunity. They do half-day trips. It's a great opportunity to take a kid, and you can almost always catch something.
What's a headboat?
It's like a party boat, a group boat. The Carolina Princess is like a 100-foot boat, can 40, 50 people.
40, 50 people at one time.
It's sort of like pier fishing in a social sense. You're around people the whole time. It's a 3-hour trip out, 3-hour trip back.
That's pretty cool.
They got a grill. The food's great. A lot of social time. It's something that's not that obvious, but it's a lot of social time on a headboat. So it's a great opportunity to meet people. We've met a lot of people over the years. But also, James, tell them about we organized, something we're going to do more is we do have several club members that have boats, and we organized a fishing outing at the Cape Lookout area with using private boats and club members this year.
Yeah, because our first outing, I'm going to say 100% that was a club trip. I came up with a suggestion that, the club, we take our members' private boats, personal boats. And man, we did that. We sat a day up. We went there. And that was actually my first time going to the jetties down in Morehead City. I have a boat, 20-foot boat, and I was taking 30 miles offshore, but just never did any inshore fishing. One of our members is Chad, and he owns 38 Special, which is out of Morehead City, a great charter boat. 38 Special is a great charter boat. He pretty much told me how to get there. You go out the inlet and you make a right, and you make a left, follow the beach line, look for the rocks. And man, we did that. I anchored the boat down. I'm telling you, man, we had about 10 members. We had 4 boats, about 10 members. Everybody had a blast. I mean, we had a blast.
Yeah, it was just fun socially, and we caught some fish. Turned out to be a bad weather day, but that happens. That's part of coastal fishing.
Well, as a person that's native to Virginia and the Chesapeake, growing up, it was always the striper and the bluefish. What do you guys consider the most popular inshore saltwater species around here that people love to catch? Or your favorite?
Mine's red drum. Kayak fishing for red drum. But
that's gotta be fun.
I mean, I grew up bass fishing, and red drum. There's a lot of skill and knowledge that transfers over to red drum fishing, except some critical things, especially with the kayak, is understanding tides, because tides are just critical, but they just fight. I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult bass fishing and largemouth bass, but for the most part, red drum just for pound just fight so much harder than a largemouth bass. But speckled trout and flounder, although one of the issues with some of these now is regulations make it if what you're after is harvesting meat, that's a whole nother thing. But red drum in North Carolina are doing the puppy drum, whatever you want to call them, redfish, the juvenile drum. There's a lot of them, and you can. It doesn't take that much skill to get out there once you've learned some basics and catch some red drum and have a blast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my favorite, man, that I'm trying to get into now is speckled trout. I'm from Edgecombe County. That's where I'm born and raised. I have a friend by the name of Quan, man. This guy, he's a young guy. Man, he's like excellent. He lives in the Plymouth area. This dude, man, can smoke some trout. He's turning me on to it, man. And I mean, it's like, water temperature. It's like cold weather, the temperature outside. It's like so many different obstacles that can stop you from catching trout. And you have to put all this stuff together to just even catch a trout. And man, it was just like, and the ones we caught, man, it was awesome, man. He smoked me though. He smoked me real good.
Yeah, those trout can be fussy.
Can be real finicky, man. I'm like, but I'm starting to love it. So yeah, I would say for me, inshore would be trout.
Yeah, the trout fishing is insane because as I've grown up, and I've said this a couple of times on the show, I'm a member of the Black Bass Advisory Committee for the state of Maryland. We work a lot with the Chesapeake Bay Association. The specs and the redfish are just, it's growing, and not just popularity, but the volume, at least in the bay, but down here. And it's cool to see the evolution because when you have the specs and you have the redfish, they're so accessible to kayak and small boats. You don't need, as you said, a 100-foot, $100,000 rig to go 30 miles offshore to have fun, which is crazy. If you would like to, what's the flounder situation down here? Because a couple of people come on and say, are they endangered, for lack of a better term, down here because the limits are so tight? What's going on?
Well, they're heavily regulated, but I don't really have my finger on the pulse of that. But at least some of the local guides are like, have to move sometimes because they're catching so many flounder. I mean, there are places where, again, that's I don't really know how to evaluate that. I understand the purpose of regulations, but there's a common perception that they're overly regulated, and in some places they're very plentiful. So I don't know. It's something I'd like to know more about. Yeah, I do know. But a complimentary point. We were talking about red drum. It's something I care about. I don't fish to harvest meat. I'm sport fishing.
Yeah.
I can't, and I love red drum fishing in part because they're so resilient. I do know with some fish, catch and release mortality is higher than with others. Red drum are very resilient. They handle catch and release really well. Like specks and striped bass can be depending on the water temperature and the oxygenation levels and stuff like that, they don't handle catch and release as well. But that's one thing I love about, I fish offshore for amberjack too. They catch and release well too. Is something.
Are you going offshore in a kayak? Like, how are you doing? Okay.
No, I'm too old for that, man. That's a common thing. It's like, have you thought about taking it beyond the breakers? Yeah. It's like, I thought about it, and I thought better of it. I'm too old for that. And that, it's one of the things, that it's easy to underestimate even with drum fishing. I mean, one limitation of a kayak is covering water, and often a lot of red drum fishing to me is a lot like hunting. You spend a lot of your day trying to find them. Once you find them, then it depends on what time of year, but like in the fall they can often be clumped up or schooled up, so you spend a lot of time finding them. Covering ground on a kayak's a challenge, and you take that out to the open ocean, and that can be a challenge, because you can crank up that motor and run X number of miles over to the shoals or the jetty. You do that on the kayak, man. It's like, and then the tide changes, the wind changes. It's like, I'm too old for kayak fishing in the ocean. The other fishery, though, that for near shore that I love, and I know we're talking about fishing and not necessarily the club, but albacore, false albacore around the Cape. People come from all over. I guess Montauk is like the biggest destination, but there are a lot of people all over the world that come to Cape Lookout and the Crystal Coast area in the fall for albacore. And when they're there, they can be finicky. They can also be just stupid easy to catch. And you're talking about 5 to 20 pound tuna. I realize they're not technically tuna, but they're the tuna mackerel family. And they fight they just burn your gear down. And we're often using like bass gear, 3,000 and 4,000 class spinning reels. And false albacore are tremendous to catch. And like I say, there's a big guide fishery in the fall in that area for sure, and they can often cover ground and find those albies and put you on fish. That's often an easy way to catch what feels like a really big fish, a 5 to 20 pound tuna, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and speaking on the albacore, that was one of my, I think that's one of my good perks of joining the club. I've never fished albacore until I met Joe, and we was on my boat, and we actually went to the jetties. First time going to the jetties, he showed me how to fish for albacore. Yeah. And that was one of the good things of joining the club. If I never joined the club, I would never done it. Yeah. So it's one of the perks of joining the club. You meet new people, and you do new stuff. So that, exactly. I love it.
This last trip, James brought a friend, but it sort of illustrates what we do as a club, teach people who are truly novices. Yeah. So I was using the spinning rod, right? And we couldn't visually find the albacore, so we started trolling like a small Yozuri deep diver, and we hooked up, and I handed the spinning rod. We should have been using conventional gear, but that's all I had at the moment. Right. I handed it to your friend. Was it Jimmy?
Jimmy. And first time, he's never fished on a boat before. That was his first time going in saltwater fishing.
It makes the point. You do need to do some basic rudimentary sort of coaching on how to use your gear. So I looked over, and he had the spinning gear upside down, reeling backwards. And so I corrected that and got him, I assured him, I'm a right-hander too. You hold your rod in the dominant hand and reel with the left, and that can be kind of a challenge. And a day of doing that, you can usually make that transition. But then I looked over, and he had the handle off the reel, and so I had to run over and put the handle back on the reel, and then so he fights the fish a little bit more, and then I looked over, and the reel was off the rod. He had unscrewed the reel seat. And it's like, then we finally got the fish to the boat, pulled him in, got the net on him, and the moment the fish hit the deck, the lure fell out. It broke the hook, and it was hilarious. But it's like, we had no business catching that fish, but we did. But it was just sort of illustrated. We should have spent some time sort of using more appropriate gear and or coaching him on how to use that. But we caught that fish.
Right. And the good thing about that was, maybe like a couple of weeks later, he and I took him out 30 miles offshore. First time, the same guy, he went 30 miles offshore. Matter of fact, he got a little seasick on the inshore trip, but he worked it out. He didn't throw up anything like that. He was good. So I was like, yo man, let's do the offshore. Let's go 30. He was like, all right, let's go. I mean, it was like 28 degrees outside. He was like, yo man, let's go.
Ooh, that hurts.
So we went out there. We was buckled up. strapped up and everything.
Well, that's an important point, knowing how you manage motion sickness. And the half-day trips on the head boats are a good way to, like if you want to take your kid fishing, take them on a half-day trip. Make sure they can handle it. And then, but there's some basic techniques. I never get seasick. I always take medication. I just don't want to mess around. It will ruin a trip. But so I take meclizine and then carry ground ginger capsules, and that's what I use for my kids when we used to get motion sickness in the car. Ground ginger's a great solution.
I guess I'm just hardcore. I just don't take anything.
Sooner or later, it gets you, man. Sooner or later.
I mean, guys, why wouldn't you want to join this club? Because these individuals are having a blast. Again, thank you so much for coming on. One more time, just promote your club real quick. Let them know how they can find you and join.
Hillsboro Sports Fishing Club. If you just Google that, you'll find us. But we're on Facebook. We're on the internet, on the web. And there's a contact email there. If you send us an email, we'll put you on our mailing list. And we'd love to have you visit a meeting and come a little early and eat with us. With the fishing, fellowship, and community.
And eating.
And what?
Eating.
Eating, yeah, absolutely.
Guys, thank you so much for joining. We're going to take a quick commercial break of about, 3 minutes?
We've been standing there waiting for 15 minutes.
We're going to be a 1 minute break while we switch out the guests, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned for our next go. Listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Did you guys miss us with our 30-second break here as we continue this marathon sprint at the Raleigh Saltwater and Bass Fishing Show? We are at day 3, part 2 of this bad boy. And if you miss us here, don't worry. We're also going to be at the Richmond Fishing Show in about 4 or 5 days. It feels like you can check us out there. But enough about that. Let's bring on our next guest. If you could just tell everyone at home what your booth is and what you're doing here.
So yes, we are Team North Carolina, the Fallen Outdoors. We are a nonprofit 501c3 veteran organization. We specialize in getting veterans, active duty, and Gold Star families into the outdoors.
We get them into the outdoors as a form of therapy to combat that 22 a day. You know, it's not just the vet when they come back that is still dealing with stuff. You know, the absence of that parent, you know, when they are deployed, it affects the entire family.
How did you guys get involved in this yourselves?
So everyone from the top down of the organization is a veteran themselves or still active duty. Myself, I am a disabled veteran, so I reached out to this group back in 2017, and it was just I needed an outlet. I was going through a rough patch, so I was not a real big fisherman. I wasn't a big hunter. I was doing it on my own. I just needed to find like-hearted people like me when I was out. And so I reached out to the group. I went on a fishing trip with them. I liked it, you know. So that's how I got involved.
Trey, do you remember your first fish you caught with them?
So I believe my first fish that I caught with them would have been a mackerel.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Saltwater. I'm really learning. There's a lot of saltwater down here. It's way bigger than a lot of parts of Virginia. Virginia's kind of coastal, Maryland, but here it's just like people eat, sleep, and breathe it. It's crazy.
Yes. You know, we love to get out onto the salt water. We're starting to get more into the fresh water, but we do a lot of offshore and inshore fishing out of the Emerald Isle area.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. How hard is that logistically to try to just get all the boat captains or one boat and then to get the veterans actually out there? The logistics got to be crazy.
So the logistics are a little bit different from what other organizations. We are Facebook oriented, and so what we do is kind of like a lottery system because we have a ton of members. So ultimately what happens, we'll place an event on Facebook for our members. We will allow them to enter their name if it's something that they would like to do. There's no cost to them. All they have to do is be able to get to the location. And then from there, we just make a selection. So depending on what the event is, we may have 5 slots, we may have 60 slots. We just do a raffle, select those names, and those are the people that actually come.
Oh, wow. How often do you do a raffle, just before each event then?
So the raffle, we try to do at least maybe a week out. Some events, we have volunteers that will volunteer their boat, and it may be a spur of the moment where we may have a 3-day turnaround for having people to put in that can make that event and doing the drawing.
I mean, with that said, besides just the drawings, do you guys have meetups that you'll do on a quarterly, monthly basis just to get people together, just to be able to talk and have a good time?
Yeah, so, a lot of the things we do, it would sound like it's hunting and fishing. We're not limited to hunting and fishing, We do anything that's outdoor related. The object is to get the vet or the family member out of the house. As long as that member is out of the house, they're engaged in an activity, they're not likely to contemplate an alternative. That alternative, unfortunately being suicide. It's estimated we lose 22 vets a day to suicide. That's where we come in. So even one to us is unacceptable. And that is why we do what we do. I know my introduction to the organization was from a former team lead for North Carolina. I joined the organization, not as staff, but just as a general member. And I had been applying for events and stuff, all over the state, and I was never selected. No sweat. I didn't think twice about it. An event came up. It was a local fundraiser, local to where I live, up in the Piedmont. They were asking for anyone to just come out and help some staff members, just sitting at a booth, just talking to vets or just the general public, about what it is we do. And I gotta say, from the moment we all met, it's like I'd known these guys forever. And I say guys, but that also includes females. We do have a female-only trips that come up from time to time. But yeah, it's personally for me, I could say, kind of, it's embarrassing, but if it was not for the organization, I personally wouldn't be here.
Fishing is generally 24/7. You can go out there and fish. Hunting,
absolutely.
there's a lot more red tape. It's very seasonal when you can do it. So does that put a lot more strain on that side of your organization to make sure that if we have so many hunting trips, we can get that figured out?
Yeah, so I mean, we don't discriminate, as far as the activities and stuff. We do reloading classes, backyard barbecue. Oh my gosh.
I mean, sometimes just a camping trip is all that people are looking for. A lot of times, the members just want to be around other people. We have a lot of active duty that are in the barracks. They just get tired of sitting in the barracks, not really having anything to do. And that's where we come in. We'll give you an opportunity to come out. And with those, there's not really a number limit. We will take as many as we can facilitate in that camping area. And sometimes it's like a whole weekend we just go and camp.
Yeah.
Sit around the fire, exchange stories, talk with each other, meet and greet. A lot of that is...
I find, with a lot of our trips that we do, especially if it's an overnight trip, just hanging out by the fire, just talking to other like-minded people.
That's big. Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge. And for me personally, I've gone out on trips and taken other vets out. Yes, I love to hunt. I love to fish. I love to trap. But when you're in that group setting, you don't realize you're getting therapy. We're not talking about, Sigmund Freud. You're not laying on a couch, telling a doctor about, your mother.
Yeah, there's something about being outside in the great outdoors that is therapeutic. I don't know if it's like all that energy and chakra crap that people talk about, but when you're in a deer stand at, as the sun rises up and it's just you and you don't have a stupid cell phone or this technology I'm using now, there's something that happens where you find that peace.
Absolutely.
It really is. Or your anxiety goes down. Same thing when you're on the water. Technology is a benefit, but also a curse. At least from what I know with people that experience it, there's so much anxiety when you're constantly connected. You can't just disassociate.
Yeah, definitely.
For me, being 30 plus miles offshore fishing, you're not getting cell service. There is no service. So it forces you to have to interact with the other people on the boats with you. Like, that's your brothers and sisters in arms that's out there with you. It makes you have to strike up a conversation. You might not be the first person, or you might be the first person to strike it up. Hey, what other things do you like? Hey, teach me some fishing techniques that you're using, things like that. That's, for me personally, that's what I love about the whole fishing aspect. When you're out on that boat, you don't have Facebook and those things to take away from your mindset. It makes you have to be social, like how we grew up being social before all of this technology.
No, yeah. 100%. Is there a perfect group size that you like to have with these things, or I guess it depends on the area you're going for camping. Like, I guess the capacity of the resort, I guess, would be kind of hard.
I can't.
Oh no, you're good. When you're going to do a fishing trip, well, let's say the camping thing, do you have to look at the capacity of the place before, like?
Definitely.
The logistics are fascinating to me when you're trying to make this all work.
Yeah. So I mean, logistics, as far as capacity, and how many people you can carry, it just depends on what you're doing. I can't fit 70 vets on a 19-foot boat and go offshore. It's not like the Haitian migration. It doesn't work that way. There are safety features, for a reason. But we try to do our best, with what we have and roll on. Because if you can make a difference of one vet's life or one family member's life, then mission's accomplished.
Yeah, for those large-scale events like that, it's not a overnight thing. We do a Memorial Day fish-a-thon.
Oh, cool.
And that right there, we're going into our 8th year this year of doing that.
Wow.
Started off with 2 boats. Last year, we had 14 boats. We also had kayak fishing integrated with it, and we had like an eco tour integrated with boats. The thing with that, we actually start planning for that the year before that Memorial Day. So we start right after our banquet. So around the September time frame, we start doing the logistics for that, finding volunteer boat captains to volunteer their boat for that weekend to get these guys out. And by the time Memorial Day rolls around, we already know how many boats we'll have available. We know where we're going to be staying. You know, so we have that logistics to know what kind of numbers we can integrate into that, because we want to feed them and everything else along with taking them out to fish. So that one you can't do in 1 week. You can't do it in 2 weeks. You can't do it in a month. You have to give those larger scale trips enough time to make sure everything's locked in. You know what your drop bottom number is going into it, and you know that you can't go over that. One thing's unique about us, we always have a backup group. So when we do selections, we also select backups. If something comes up where a member cannot make it, we have another member on standby that understands you are on backup status, but if your name comes up, are you available? And majority of the time they're available to do it. So we take all of that into account when we're doing large scale logistics like that. With camping, it's just more of a safety. Do we have enough staff to be out there to facilitate how many vets we're going to have out there, or how many members we're going to have? Mm-hmm. We call them vets, but again, we do have family members of them. We do trips where the kids are integrated into them, because the kids are a part of that mission as well. When the military service member is deployed, those kids feel that just as well as that service member feels it, just as well as that spouse feels it. So we're here to try to integrate that for them as well, to make it more comfortable for them. Like, we can't replace that parent while they're deployed, but we can kind of step in and be that parent kind of figure to make sure they're still being able to go out and do things that they would do if their parents were still here. And same thing with Gold Star families.
You guys do an amazing job. Please go check out their organization. One more time, if people want to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
So if you go onto Facebook, you can find us at the Fallen Outdoors community page. Just go on there. If you are a service member prior or still active, or Gold Star family member, just find you in your region. We are in from Washington State all the way to Florida. We're across the country. So look for your region. It's all listed by your state as to your region. You go on there. There is no charge to sign up to be a part of our organization. All we ask is that you answer the 3 questions on Facebook that it asks you, and then you're able to join us, be able to put in if you want to volunteer. We are always looking for volunteers.
There you have it. And then, guys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab the card real quick. I'm going to hold that bad boy up to the camera. Let's see. That's why we go right there. Go check it out right there. Trey, team lead. And then I think this QR code will work if you guys want to screenshot the QR code.
Absolutely.
Boom. Go give them a check out. Great organization. Thank you guys so much for coming on. We're going to be taking a quick commercial break, and we'll be back at 2 p.m. with our next guest. Thank you so much, guys. listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
And we are back. How is everyone doing? Please let me know in the comment section down below. How is the audio sounding right now? Made a few little adjustments, so it should sound a little bit better. But you know, just let me know. Again, I got a brand new guest here in the hot seat right now. Jeff, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. Pleasure to be here.
So, what brings you to this expo this year?
I'm a bait maker, right? I love fishing. I've been fishing my entire life. I used to do this show years ago. I haven't been to this show in 15 years as a vendor. So I fished the National Professional Fishing League. My rod sponsor here has a booth here every year, so he invited me to bring some of my own homemade baits up here, set up with him. Showcase my product, talk about his product a little bit. We're developing a rod for my products through him, so he thought it was be a good time to collaborate a little bit and show things off.
How did you get into bait making?
I fell in love with crankbait making probably 35 years ago when it was at its peak, and I spent a lot of time searching for something no one else had, right? That's the competitive nature in me. And bought a lot of custom baits from a lot of builders around the country. And my father, he's a master woodworker, has a big wood shop. And about 21 years ago, I decided I was going to make my own because I felt like at the time I could make an inferior product than what I was able to get my hands on. And little did I know, that process would take me about 4 years to get to where I felt like, okay, I'm going to release it to the public. That started with one style bait, the bait that I like the most, targeting 10 to 12 foot range, just like the old Pose 400s, which I make a copy of the Pose 400s. They're actually the original Pose 400 bodies that I use. There's a gentleman that bought the remaining stock when Pose sold out. I get those bodies from him. I have developed a couple others of my own, but I still love that particular body, that particular bait. It's cedar, not balsa. And so I make that bait, and then that has just transposed into about 15 different baits that I make. I'm one that, when I get an idea in my head, it's a challenge. Once I reach and accomplish that challenge and feel like, okay, that challenge is accomplished, I kind of move on to the next challenge, and I kind of get put back a little bit. I've got baits here at this show this year that I haven't made in 5, 6, 7 years. Just because I'm just one person in my shop. I'm always looking to improve and do better things. And so some of them older baits that I brought back for requests from people that's bought baits from me in the last 20 years.
How long does it take for you to come up with a design, going from here to paper to being a real thing?
I have hundreds of ideas in my head. It's finding the time to figure out that idea and finding the time to actually make prototypes, adjustments from there that I struggle with. I have a full-time job. I fish a full-time professional fishing league. I'm gone 7 weeks a year for that. I'm always tinkering just about every night when I'm home in the shop, but I have so many ideas, I probably won't ever get to all of them in my lifetime.
That's insane. So what was the first one that you made that made you think, oh, this is a thing? Like, this could potentially be something of more than just a hobby, but a passion that could take you somewhere?
Well, I don't know if there's a particular one. Like I said, I started off with deep cranking. I felt like deep cranking, there was a lot of options out there in the plastic world. Wasn't a whole lot, and there's even less today in the wood world. There's a lot of wood bait makers that make shallow running, 0 to 10 foot, but there's very few that make anything 10 to 20 foot. And that was my depth range that I tried to target early on. And that's kind of shifted to, some of the shallow stuff, out of balsa, stuff like that, right?
How hard is it to work with balsa and wood?
It's not really that hard to work with the wood. The process of making sure your wood is sealed, making sure your top coats and all that are gonna hold up to the environment that you're gonna put it through. I put my baits through a lot of torture. We're throwing it against bridge pylons, stuff like that, right? It's not hard to work with it once you find the process. I collaborate with a lot of builders around the country, and I know how they build things. They know how I build things. I can't build them like they do. I've tried. I'm sure they've tried to build them like I do, using the same materials, all that. It's just when you find what works for you, it's best to just stay in your own lane. And because when you go start trying to change that thing, it opens up the door for problems. And I've seen that happen more than once.
Something about wood baits that's fascinating to me is we have all this technology where you can basically 3D print anything you want out of any material, but you can still get on eBay and find the OG wiggle warts and Bagleys and stuff going for hundreds of dollars because of just how they were made with the wood. What is it about a wood crankbait that we can't almost duplicate in 2025 with all the science and shit we have?
Probably materials, density of wood. Nowadays, the old wiggle warts, a lot of that stuff that you mentioned is discontinued stuff. I get a lot of requests for paint. Hey, can you paint this discontinued color?
Really?
Oh yeah. I've done a lot of that for a lot of pros across this country for years. I can't never match it exactly, right? Because pigments change in color. You don't really know what they used 20 years ago. As far as type of paint, that's always advancing too. And even me building for 20 years, I may get order a paint today and a year from now order the same paint and it be slightly different. Being able to try to, when that happens, right? I'm the type of person that I paint from the heart. I don't paint from a paint scheme. I very rarely take notes unless it's something that I really like at the end of the end result. I may write something down and say, yeah, I need to remember that. But most of the time when I go out there and paint, it's just my passion. I just paint from the heart. I just try to envision what I want the outcome. And you got to think about this. People always look at a crankbait or jerkbait, whatever it may be, and they see the final product. Whereas when I look at that bait, I'm looking from the inside out, because you can't get to the finished product from the outside in. You have to come from the inside out. And maybe that's where my vision's a little bit different than the typical fisherman, right? Because when they say, hey man, this is a great color right there, immediately in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, where's my layering process to have this end result? And that's some of the challenges, and that's what I mean by challenges. I accept the challenge. I try to figure that out. It's not like I take paint chips and go have it analyzed and tell me what colors are in it. I try to figure that out on my own because that's what I like to do.
And then could we see some of these baits? I could bring up.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned the 400 body. This is my version of it. Name of my company is Exit 9 Custom Baits. It's named after my father. He's a retired military. Like I said, he was a big woodworker. And when I started out doing this, I had the resources already. I knew that, right? I just had to figure out the process and make the end product what I was looking for.
That one is very, it's almost got a slim shape to it. What does, for people that don't know at home, What does the shape of a wood bait do to it? I'm assuming like a fatter one, wider wobble, thinner, tighter.
Well, there's a lot of variables. You can make this bait. You can make it as tight or as wide as you want just by ballast placement.
Really?
You can line tie placement is probably the most important thing. If we were to move that line tie placement, let's say closer to the bait on the lip, it's going to make it wider. If you move it out on the lip, it's going to make it tighter. So the challenge is finding that sweet spot for what you're looking for. So these bills I designed, we happened, when I started this 21 years ago, it was all, we would make our own hand jigs, stuff like that, so we could be as consistent as possible. Well, about 15 years ago, we invested in a CNC. So now I have the CNC that gives me the ability to make my bodies, my lips, everything to precision as you possibly can, within the thousandths of each other. And then it's just a matter of replicating your process and the finishing and the ballast, placement, angles, line, lip slot angles, stuff like that, changes the bait. Just 1 or 2 degrees can be significant.
Big, yeah. When you're designing these baits, how important is the epoxy for keeping it tethered to the wood, the lip to the wood? Because I've seen this a lot on lesser designed wood baits where that seems like that's the brittle focal point when you're chucking that thing constantly. You have people that will smack them to clean the grass off, things like that. Is there a certain secret sauce to keep that bill locked into the bait?
Well, what I do, a lot of people will twist a wire and just run it in there. It's important. I think the most important thing, a lot of times when a balsa bait breaks out at the head like that, like you're speaking of, I'm assuming that's what you mean. I think it's important to make sure that wood is cured and hardened before you ever build it, right?
Okay.
So there's several ways to do that. I use a sort of like a super glue, and I seal my wood in super glue. And what that does is it seals it, keeps out the water and all that. And I do that in a 5-step process. I do 5 layers and let it really soak into that wood. And not only is it sealing it, but it's also hardening it. Doesn't change the buoyancy much, but it hardens it significantly. Another thing I do is I make my own bills. I bend my own wire. So my wire actually wraps around and comes back, and it's sort of like a pin. Once I insert that thing, you're not getting it out. If you try to pull it out, you're gonna tear the head of the bait off. It's not coming out.
How long does the hardening process take when you're letting it cure, generally speaking?
Well, from start to finish, let's just say from a blank body all the way to a finished product, it's about 2-week curing time.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
That's a labor of love.
Yeah. It is a labor of love. It's my passion. I enjoy doing it. I tell my wife all the time, it's my therapy, right? I have had a bad day at work or whatever, or just not feeling good. I can get out there and start messing around with my airbrush or, sanding baits, building whatever, and just forget about everything else that's going on in the world. And usually that's when my best ideas come to me.
Well, what is it with the Carolinas and crankbaits? Because it's like peanut butter and jelly. It's insane, the culture down here for crankbait fishing.
Well, we have a lot of reservoirs that were, kind of conditioned for that love, right? We have a lot of 10 to 15-foot ledges, and then fish like that, right? And we have a lot of that in North Carolina, where there's just a lot of it here. It's been that way for as long as I can remember, and I don't want to tell my age, but it's a long time.
And the chartreuse, I've had a couple people on to talk about that. I'm still shocked that with all the fancy stuff we've done with technology, Jimmy Houston was throwing a chartreuse spinnerbait and a chartreuse crankbait, and now in 2025, you can throw a chartreuse crankbait and still catch them. It's like the fish never get conditioned to it. It's crazy.
Well, that type of fish is not really they're not really sight feeding. It's a reaction bite, right? And the chartreuse you speak of, you're going to draw their attention, and I'm assuming that, to me, chartreuse is in a stained water, dirty water situation. And so what that does allows, once that bass or whatever you're targeting feels that bait in the water column, they're searching for it, right? And the chartreuse just helps them focal in on it when they get within
Gotcha.
strike zone, right?
That's interesting. So what's the other bait that you have there?
This is a shallow bait. Like I said, I started out with the deep divers because that was my favorite way to fish them. And just over the years, just getting requests to make shallow baits. And this is a particular one, I designed this bait about 4 months ago.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Give it a second there. There we go.
So the one thing about the wood bait world, and I'm a believer in, is you mentioned earlier about plastic and all that stuff. Well, a lot of plastic baits, I think the fish get conditioned to those because of the rattles and stuff in it. Whereas I'm totally opposite of that. I want a silent bait. I want a bait that sneaks up on a fish.
Interesting.
I want a bait that he doesn't hear it or see it or, coming from a long way. I want it to just be right there, and he has to make a decision. Am I going to eat it or not? Right? And a wood bait a lot of times will do that for you, allow you to sneak up. Because even though there's no rattle, that particular bait you just showed right there, that's the only bait I make that has a rattle in it currently. Just out of request. That's why I had to make it 1/2 inch wide. I make a homemade rattle that's in there. Everything about that bait is homemade except the ballast weight.
Is that harder to do? To separate the wood, to put the rattle in and put it back together?
Well, making a two-piece bait is a lot of work.
Yeah.
This is actually a one-piece bait.
Wow.
Right? I cut it on my CNC, then it goes to the table router, and then from there I'm into my curing and sealing process and so forth and so on. Then I have to think about my lip design. I then go to my software, create my lip, engrave it with my name, figure out where the line placement is. I do a lot of that R&D early on by hand. Like I may not put that line tie placement on. I may cut the design of the lip and do several, sometimes I may go through 20 or 25 baits, tuning it in to where I want it before I actually take it to the machine and actually replicate exactly what I want. I am a perfectionist. Yeah, I like I said, I consider it a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But my downfall to that is I'm one guy in the shop.
Yeah.
Once I reach that challenge in my mind, it's like, okay, now I don't feel challenged by just sitting there making the same thing over and over and over. I do that because I enjoy it, but I'm already thinking about the next thing, the next challenge.
Well, what is the next challenge for you? Are you thinking about bigger ones, smaller baits, or is it something you don't want to discuss?
No. So, the last 5 years or so, the glide bait world has fascinated me as well as others. So I've got 3 glide baits that I've been working on. And that is a serious challenge to me because what I've done is I can make them out of wood all day long, but I'm trying to make a resin bait so I can get them out quicker because like I said, I'm one man in a shop. And when I do wood, because of all the curing processes and the time it takes to cure the wood, it's quicker and faster for me to get them in people's hands by making a resin. Resin's a different world than wood.
Really?
Very much so. I've got one bait I've worked on for 18 months, off and on, when I had time. And I'm almost there, but I'm not quite there comfortable yet to put it to the general public. I have people testing them and giving me feedback and making minute adjustments and weight placement,
For people that aren't good with their hands like me, what is so hard with resin? Because you hear about this in the glide bait world about getting the resin right. What is it?
It's the buoyancy of the resin. And one manufacturer's resin compared to another. Not only the resin, but some of the stuff you put in the resin to get that buoyancy. I don't want to give away too many secrets because I have a lot of friends that are in that world, and I have a lot of people I can lean on if I need to. I don't really want to, It's a mixture. It's like
It's a recipe.
It's a recipe.
Gotcha. Okay.
And figuring out that recipe is the difficult part. I can make the bait all day long, but it just doesn't react and perform the way the way I see it in my mind.
So that's the art in that glide bait underground thing. Is it's almost you're cooking, and you got to get that recipe just right.
Correct.
But the recipes are all guarded secrets. That's fascinating. Okay.
Correct. It's all physics.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good with physics.
Is that better bang for your buck to do glide baits as for a business standpoint?
It can be. It is for several.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not doing it for the money. I do it for the love.
Sure.
Right. I'm basically doing that because I'm challenging myself to be able to do it. And once I accomplish what I'm doing, I'll probably just move on to the next thing and just keep that within a small circle.
Interesting. That's really cool. Have you ever thought about dabbling in old school topwater baits, like bring some of those designs back?
I have. I've actually years ago I used to make cedar spooks, right? And that came from my saltwater fishing days. A cedar plug was a great plug for catching mahi. And like I said, my dad's got a fully equipped shop. I've made many wooden cedar spooks and sold them all over this country, and I just got away from it. I haven't made one of those in probably 7, 8, 9 years.
Wow.
I still got bodies laying around the shop. I got bodies from, when I started 20 years ago, I still got hundreds of bodies of every bait that I've ever tinkered with laying around my shop. And every now and then I'll pull out some of them original OGs and build some, right? But I'm always trying to improve and advance and make something better.
Now, we did have a question that came off through here. And then, guys, if you want to get a question answered, drop it. If it's on Facebook or YouTube, I can share it. If it's on Instagram, I can. The Instagram question here is, what is your favorite size and color crankbait for going into the springtime?
My favorite size is anywhere from 2 to 2.5 inch, depending on your location, water temperature, stuff like that. I like a flat-sided bait. I take several of my baits and I may make this bait right here that we showed 3 different ways. And what I mean by that is I may change the line angle, change the lip design, all that, just to do a specific thing. So I can take one body that I've gotten right, buoyancy and all that, and I can actually turn that into 2, 3, 4 baits.
Wow.
Right? Just depends on what I'm trying to target. But my favorite bait is anything that's going to run 3 to 5 foot range, depending on the water temperature, how tight I want that wobble, how hard I want it thumping. The water color will dictate that for me, but pretty much 2 1/4, 2.5 inch bait, it's hard to go wrong with.
I mean, Jeff, I really appreciate you coming on. I just want to make sure, before I get some other question and go down a rabbit hole, is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you want to make sure we promote to the general public?
Well, I'd like to promote myself. Fishing the National Professional Fishing League. I got a new bronze sponsor here who's going to be coming on next, I believe. Kissel Crafts, Mr. Sean Hendricks there. He's been generous enough to step up and, give me the opportunity to promote his product across the country this year. And I'm really appreciative for that. I'm appreciative to you for having me on here to talk a little bit about myself.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Anybody can reach me out there at Facebook or Instagram, JeffHodgesFishing.com.
And then now that we got the fun stuff out of the way, guys, I can ask a question I've been dying to ask, which is, ever since the virus of unknown origins, they had one cool year where they had some fall tournaments, and then what's really cool about the NPFL, I think, is having fall events. What do you think about that schedule going into next year with how scattered it is?
Well, I fished the NPFL in 22 and 23 during the time when my mom got real sick and unfortunately ended up passing. So really, for me, I always wanted to fish on that level. Mm-hmm. That's the competitiveness in me, ever since I was a child, playing baseball, basketball, whatever. When I got married in my 20s and started having kids and stuff, that kind of got put on the back burner. So finally, when I got older and got my kids through college and stuff, I was like, it's kind of bucket list. It's not, I have a different outlook on professional fishing than most of the people I fish against. It's not about, it's about something that I wanted as a child. So I'm basically stepping back. So I took 24 off. I decided halfway through 24 I was coming back in 25 regardless, because Brad, going over there, Brad Fuller and all them, they said, hey, look, Jeff, you know, you want to come back, you always got a spot in our family. I was like, I appreciate that. You know, I had a couple tough couple of years there dealing with some family issues. And so for me, it's not about the fishing or the notoriety or anything. It's about the relationships I've made over there. I got friends all over the country.
It's a family.
It is a family, and it's bucket list stuff for me, and it's times I wouldn't. You can't put a price on it.
Mm-hmm. No,
and I love the schedule. And I had already decided I was coming back before, you know, we even knew anything about the schedule. Then they banned the forward-facing sonar, which I don't have, you know, I can go either way, right? I don't particularly, I didn't grow up fishing that way, so it's new to me. But I feel like it was a distraction, right? Because I don't want to fish that way. Yeah. I'm a crankbait guy. I'm a fast mover. I don't sit still for a minute, right? And I'd always be up there thinking, man, I need to just be out there scoping, right? And so it was distracting. So I'm looking forward to the change. I think it's going to benefit me as well as some other of the older guys that you've seen coming into the league. You know, I'm excited about fishing with those guys, but I love the schedule. I love what I consider late winter to early fall fishing.
I do too. Yeah, especially because here it feels like fall. If you just looked at a calendar, you'd always be called a liar, because December sometimes here is still fallish weather. I mean,
yes.
5 days ago, I feel like North Carolina just experienced winter for the first time for where I'm at Northern Virginia. But I remember guys still catching them in like fallish kind of areas in December until this weather snap that we had.
Absolutely. Some of the biggest fish in our area get caught less than 3 feet of water in January, right? Now they're close to deep water, but yeah, it depends on the season, right? And that's what you got to pay attention to leading into a season. Like we start at Santee Cooper first week of March, that could be lights out. Depending on 2 weeks leading up to it, whether we're on a warming trend or if they have a cold front or we're on a downturn. If it's a warming trend, you're going to see some impressive stuff.
That's awesome stuff. We did have one more question that came through here, which is, Jeff, what do you consider the best crankbait lake I could go to kind of get started with my crankbaiting adventures?
In North Carolina?
Let's go North Carolina, or on the East Coast is fine, either way.
This time of year, I would probably say like a small lake, like Hyco. Hyco's loaded with bass. They like a crankbait. You got lots of rock. You got lots of transition areas. You, like I said, if you want to just go experiment and get bites on a crankbait, I would say Hyco is probably #1 destination. As it starts warming up, I would probably lean towards more of a falls and a Jordan type of lake. Carr Lake, it's hard to beat. Actually, Carr Lake in January is probably the best time to crank January if you can, you know, if you can find them on Carr Lake in January. January, early February is absolutely the best time to throw a small crankbait. Okay. You know, when you start getting into May, in June, that's when you start, after the post spawn, that's when they start getting out on the ledges, and you want to, you know, look for them there.
That big old stuff. So that was a really good question. Send me a email. I'm going to give you a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle, because, yeah, if you want to learn a new technique, you got to go to a lake that can catch them. My high school coach said if you want to learn punching, you got to go to Florida, because you got to go to a place you can actually have some success to get confidence. So that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Now, Jeff, I can't thank you enough. We have a sponsor coming on next, so we're going to take a quick, 10-minute break so we can rotate some people out. So everyone stay tuned. listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Alrighty, guys, we are back here at the Raleigh Fishing Expo, the Bass and Saltwater Expo here, day 3. It's about 3 o'clock here on part 2 of this thing. We got another fantastic guest for you right here. Sir, just if you want to, Sean, if you want to just talk about your booth and what you're doing here.
Okay. Yeah, Sean Minutes, Kissel Crafts.
Wow.
But we handmade rods, custom gas, rods, anything from a 2-inch ice rod up to 10, 12 foot saltwater shark rod, whatever you want. So 1 piece, 2 piece, up to 4 pieces, and plenty of fly rods. So all our stuff is handmade, built on the spine, balanced unless you tell us different. It has a lifetime warranty. All of our stuff has a serial number on it, and as long as you have that serial number, can give us a call. If you have a guide that's messed up, missing an insert, or your rod breaks, we'll take care of it for you. So,
Did you foresee yourself owning a rod company back 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Absolutely not. What happened was I started fishing the opens, Bassmaster Opens, and Kissel Crafts. The guy's name was John Kissel. Actually started a company in Ocracoke, North Carolina in 1964. So building saltwater rods.
Wow.
Then he moved to Barrow County, Georgia. He was a head crime scene investigator in Barrow County, and took the rods down there and started building freshwater rods because, of course, we're inland and started, around all the lakes, Lake Lanier and all those. So he was one of my first sponsors when I started fishing the Bassmaster Opens, and loved the rods.
And what year was that?
That was 2009.
2009.
Yeah,
okay.
2009. So we started fishing the opens. 2015, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Of course, we know that's a rough road to hoe, and he passed away in 2016. As a matter of fact, I got the call. I had the trailer loaded up and was headed here to do the show for him when I got the call that he had passed away. So, but anyway, once all that got settled, that he had told his family members that if anybody was going to continue with the company, it would be me and my wife, Sonny, and that we could keep the name. And of course, we did that, and we're still going today.
It's
and
a big moment when somebody kind of like, that's heavy, you know?
Yeah. It's it was tough. What's kind of weird about it is I spent a lot of time with John, and I'd go over and watch him build my rods and build others' rods, and not knowing that he was teaching me to carry the company for the future, and so I learned everything I know from him. So I don't know if he knew what he was doing or not. I didn't know what he was doing, but that's where we are today. And we pretty much, the first few years, we've doubled the size of the company.
Wow.
And the last couple of years, we've increased it probably 40 or 50%. So we're steady growing. We're still small, but we have a heck of a following in the state of North Carolina. And we're always here at the Raleigh Bass and Saltwater Expo. We put it on our calendar every year, and we plan on being here. And we always have a great show here. We got plenty of folks in this area that use our stuff and continue to order from us. So we're happy to be here.
Once he passed, and you were a year and some change into running the company, were you able to reflect on something that you learned picking up running this rod company as it was growing and expanding?
Yeah, here's the thing. In a custom rod business, a person comes up and asks, hey, build me a jig rod, or I'm looking for a crankbait rod, or I'm looking for a spinnerbait rod. Well, I'm 6'2", 270 pounds, I'm not going to build a jig rod the same way I'd build it for me as I would for someone that's 5'8", 150 pounds. But one thing that John instilled on me is one, customer service. Each person, it becomes a personal relationship because they're going to want something unique to them, to their size, to their specs, and no matter what they're doing with it, I love jig fishing. I'm not going to go and try to tell somebody how to jig fish. They got their own way. Yeah. Same with cranking, same with spinnerbaits, same with anything. So let them tell me how they want their rod built, and we build it. Versus them, anybody can go into Bass Pro Shops or Academy or any other retail store and pick up rod and say, yeah, this is the one I want. But they may only have 8 or 10 selections, right? They could come to us and say, I like this, but add more tip, or make it more butt heavy, or make it more tip heavy, or put my hook keeper instead of at 12 o'clock position, put it to the left, or put it to the right, or put it underneath. Or I want a full cork grip, or I want a split EVA grip, or I want a wind grip, or I want black guides and pink wraps. It doesn't matter. We do that.
Have you seen the movie Tin Cup with Kevin Costner by chance?
Absolutely.
What part of the rod building, when you hear from people, you think is the most, it's mental for them? Like, they have to have it, and it's just because they think it gives them an advantage. Is it like having like the pink tip on a rod or something adjusted like that? Because
a lot of times it's their favorite football team or their favorite colors. But in the fishing industry, especially tournament fishing, and with a custom rod manufacturer, a lot of our, if not 100% of our customers are tournament fishermen, because they're going to invest some time, they're going to invest some money in a custom built rod. So in the fishing industry, everybody knows it's probably 60% confidence anyway.
Yes.
So they want to build something that they had a part in. Hey, I want it this way. That's my confidence level. That's, when the going gets tough, I'm going to throw a jig. When the going gets tough, I'm going to throw a square bill. When the going gets tough, I'm going to throw a spinnerbait. And yeah, whatever their lucky color is, or whatever, I got to have a split grip, and I got to have my finger on the blank. So don't make the grip but so long. So
Good Lord.
that's 100% part of the customization.
Yeah.
And it goes back to confidence of, if I can put my finger 2 inches above the reel seat and be touching the blank, then I know I can feel more bites, and that's what we give them. So
after every person that's called in about a custom rod, which technique seems to have the most opinions on it has to be just this way and it's perfect?
Probably cranking.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
A lot of people, length, and the parabolic bend. If you got a rod, if they got a parabolic, like now this is a jig rod here, so you see the first 4 guides where the parabolic bend is, then it goes down to the backbone. But in cranking, some people want a parabolic bend all the way to the reel seat. They want a spaghetti noodle. But then the very next guy may come up and say, I don't want that. I want a parabolic bend at the 6th guide, and then I want backbone the rest of the way because I want to boat flip my fish, or I lose more fish because of it's too parabolic, or I lose more fish because it's too stiff. Again, getting back to that confidence level. So I would say cranking is probably the most diverse what we build for rods. When it gets to the more changes or the more versions that we bring to a show is probably cranking.
When you talk about making the perfect combo, we talk about the taper, the power, all that, but I feel like people don't talk about the line that has to go with that, because if you're throwing a pool noodle with old school mono, that's a hell of a lot of give that you have there.
Yep.
How important is it when you make a rod or anyone that's listening to match the line with the technique and the rod itself?
But the first thing I do is when you see people come over to our booth is they say, hey, I'm looking for a 7/6 cranking rod. or a 7/6 rod, the first thing I ask them, what are you doing with it? What are you doing with it? And I don't mean, you know, for sake of being a smarty pants answer. If I don't, you know, I'm bass fishing with it. No, what are you doing with it? Are you throwing square bills? Are you throwing crankbaits down to 9 feet? Do you throw fluorocarbon? Do you throw braid? Do you throw monofilament? Do you throw a copolymer? You want spinning? You want casting? And balance too, because you know most of our rods are balanced, you know, on the reel. So as you can see here, once you put a reel on it, it's pretty balanced. I can put it on that finger, and there's nothing holding each side of this rod up, so it's balanced. So most folks want it balanced. But then you got the, you got the aspect of them feeling the fish or feeling the bite as well. So, yeah, the first thing I ask is, what are you doing with it? And that tells me where to go and what to hand them in the model numbers of what we bring to a show.
That's important. Yeah, because I mean, again, if you want to get into the custom rod sphere, you really need to be able to go down the rabbit hole of what you want, how you're going to match everything up, so you're not going to be upset at the person designing the rod, like, oh, I missed a fish or whatever. It's like, well, the hook wasn't correct with the setup and the line. And it's a science when you get into, especially because I fish a lot of BFS stuff for smallmouth up where I'm at, and once you go that wimpy, I realized real quick, it's like you have to get specific hooks that when you set the hook on a medium light, ultra light kind of bait casting setup, you can actually puncture because if the hook's too thick, it's worthless. And I didn't appreciate that until I started experimenting with all these different setups. And it's insane where you can go with this to make it as fine and perfect as possible.
Absolutely, even to your hook set style. You know, you get some folks that say, hey, I want to throw a buzz bait, but I lose a lot of fish on a buzz bait, or I miss a lot of fish on a buzz bait because I'm too anxious, right? So I'm like, okay, well, try this as a little bit longer rod and a more moderate tip. That'll give the time the fish to grab it from you. And even if you do set the hook early or fast, that gives it that little bit of delay in time before that gets to the bait and pulls it away from the fish. So I'll slow the tip down for them, and that'll give them a better hookup ratio. And I've had many people come back and say, hey, that rod you built for me is perfect. I've caught more fish, I've landed more fish, because it makes up for my mistake for being too fast of a hook set.
So guys, I'm going to be giving away a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle right here. Ask a good question and win a prize. I just opened up the chat feature here, so ask a question and win a prize. If someone wanted to order one of your rods, what's the process like? What's the turnaround time? Could we walk through that?
Yeah, we got a website, kisselcrafts.com, and up at the top it says build your own rod or custom build your rod. Once you do that, you know, you submit it and it'll email us the order. There's also, if you don't know what blank you want and you just say, hey, I want to build a chatterbait rod, but I'm new to the sport, what do you suggest? There's a box in there that we can give you some feedback and say, hey, here's what we sell a lot of chatterbait rods on, and I'll also give you a call and say, hey, got your message. How can we help you? I can tell you what most of my pro staff uses for a chatterbait rod. I can tell you what I use for a chatterbait rod, and that'll point you in the right direction. Another thing with us is we'll build you a chatterbait rod. If you don't like it, send it back, and we'll make that softer tip. We'll make that firmer tip. We'll make a longer rod. We'll make a shorter rod, and you know, we rebuild it with you because we want it perfect for you, because it is your customization. So yeah, it's pretty easy, pretty simple. Or you can give us a call, and we can work your way through that as well. Triple turnaround time. If everything's in stock, we generally get it out to you in about 10 days.
10 days.
So, and of course, then by the time we always ship USPS, and believe it or not, USPS is it is. We have a better success rate for getting those rods to you in one piece or without getting missing or lost than the other parcel carriers. So we do ship USPS. We usually get it out in about 10 days. Depending on where you are in the country, it may take 2 days, may take 3 days, may take 5 days, may take a week. But we always ship priority, so it should go out in 2 to 3 days. But sometimes it's a little bit longer. But if you want us to ship FedEx or UPS, we could do that too. We just typically ship USPS. One thing we do is ship in a PVC pipe, PVC tube capped on both ends, so it gets to you. We also put it in a cellophane bag so the finish doesn't scratch. So when that thing gets to you, it shines like a new nickel. So.
We do have a question here from Brandon Solis on Instagram. He asks, Sean, for your personal preference, do you prefer going a little bit more sensitive or a little bit more dull on your chatterbait rod? So interesting. So personal preference, do you want to be more sensitive or do you want more of a delayed reaction on your chatterbait setup?
Chatterbait rods, it depends. That's a good question, because in my part of the world in South Georgia, I have a different chatterbait rod if I'm throwing around docks and open water than if I'm going down south to Seminole or any of the Florida lakes where there's hydrilla. Because if they're around docks and I'm skipping a chatterbait under docks or around docks, I want a little more backbone and a faster tip so I can get them out from under that dock. Because I am using 12 or 14 pound fluorocarbon. I don't want them to get around that dock and saw me off on a dock post or a piece of metal or a jet ski lift or anything like that. If I'm down in Florida or a grass lake, a little softer tip's okay. I rip it from the hydrilla or milfoil, and it gives them an extra second to eat it, and I don't take it away from them too fast. So whenever I snatch it out of that milfoil patch, and it's that little delay when they eat it, it gets them to load up better, and I have a better hook set.
So you want it for the grass setup, because I live on the Potomac River. You want it to bog in there, and you want that a couple of seconds before you rip it. Interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to try that setup. Now, do you like fluorocarbon or braid on your chatterbait setup?
I use fluorocarbon.
All the way?
100% fluorocarbon. Yeah.
20-ish?
I use 17 to 20. Yeah.
17 to 20? Interesting stuff. We got another question here. What is your perfect spinnerbait setup?
My spinnerbait setup is the model number is an SB812, and it's a blend. What I mean by a blend is, everybody knows that fiberglass has more parabolics in it, and the carbon is a stronger blank or graphite. So we have a blend. It's an SB812. It's a blend of graphite and fiberglass, and it pretty much the parabolics in the last 3 or 4 guides. It's a 6.9 setup. It has an excellent backbone, and the way the rod loads up is it gives that fish a time to eat that spinnerbait, and you feel him on there. Then you can set the hook like a Texas rig worm or a jig, and then dig that hook in the top of that fish's mouth, and have the strength of that backbone to get that fish in. So the SB812 is a blended blank, again 6.9, and that's what I use for my spinnerbaits.
Interesting. Is there a lot? If you had to have a multi-purpose rod, we have co-angler shows all the time. What 2 techniques pair the best together so you could use one rod? Would it be like a chatterbait spinnerbait, a flipping stick frog rod? Like, what kind of combos could you get away with if you're in a pinch?
I actually bring 2 with me to the show that I bring multiple. When I say multiple, 10 different rods or 10 of those items. We have a MB843. It's a 7-foot, medium heavy, fast tip. That rod is good for spinnerbait, it's good for chatterbait, it's good for buzzbait, it's good for Texas rig. It's good for light jigs. When I say a light jig, 3/8 ounce, maybe a 1/2 ounce, and that's about it. If you like a longer cast and you're a taller person, we have the MB873. That's a 7.3, and it's exactly the same blank, it's just 3 inches longer. Again, very good for buzzbaits, spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, and it walks a Zara spook like a champion. Very effortless, great parabolic tip, and a great backbone to once you set the hook on the fish to bring it in. So and I tell people all the time, if you want to buy one rod and you want to fish farm ponds, or you're just learning and you don't have a ton of money and you want to buy one rod for several applications, buy the MB843 or the MB873, 7-foot, 7.3, and that'll be the best thing for you.
Right on there. We also have Southern Georgia Kayak Bass Fishing, who says, Sean, take on the micro eyes on heavy rods. Interesting thing there. Micro eyes. Are micro eyes a fad? Because I don't see them as much anymore.
The problem with micro guides, I only build a micro guide rod if somebody tells me to, if that's what they request. And I only do it usually on moving rods. And the reason being is if you look at a micro guide, and I'll show you this one. This is not a micro guide. But if you look at a micro guide, a lot of the micro guides, the feet are very short. There are certain brands, I won't name any names, that only build on micro guides. I can't tell you how many rods I repair in a year because the guides come out. And I can go to a store brand new and pull those guides out of those rods with little effort. A regular size guide's got a longer foot. That allows me to get more thread wraps around that foot, securing that guide to the rod, okay? That's why I like a regular guide, regular size guide. And we do a macro guide, which is it's a 4 millimeter instead of a 3 millimeter. It still has the long foot like a regular guide, but it's a tad bit smaller. So we do offer that to our customers as well that don't really want to bite into that micro guide deal. So they can get the macro guide or the regular guide. But this is fact, not fiction, not a fad. A micro guide has a smaller foot, which means less support, which means less wraps of thread around that guide, binding that guide to the blank.
That's interesting. Dude, guys, I just got a whole lesson in rod making here. I mean, sir, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Did we touch on everything? Is there anything else that we can promote that you guys have coming up?
Yeah, we do. We primarily build on MHX blanks, but we have been tinkering with this blank. It's a point blank, and it's our new greatest, latest. It's feather light. We brought 5 of the show to this weekend. We've got 1 left. That tells you how good they've been selling for us. And it's a premium blank, guys. And I've been told that this needs to be a $350 rod, but we're selling it at the show this weekend for $259. Again, everything has our lifetime warranty. We don't have a name for it yet. It's probably going to be a PB and a number, but we'll have it on the website soon. But we already have, our Elite X blanks that are top of the line right now. But this will be replacing that. So look for them soon. They are super light. I know Buster has been on the tank all week showing folks, and I've had plenty of interest come by and pick those things up, and the first thing out of their mouth is, wow, I can't believe how light it is. And I've had one of my pros in Georgia testing it for about a month now, and he's been boat flipping 3s and 4s with us constantly, and I told him, don't net them, boat flip them. We want this thing to hold up. Let's see how it holds up. I know it's lightweight. We want to make sure it's strong and dependable. So he hadn't tore it up yet. It's been doing good for us. Super lightweight, super sensitive. So we'll have more out soon. We'll have more on our website. But yeah, it's a new, it's going to be a point blank series that we're going to be building on, and we'll have them out pretty soon.
Kissel Crafts, Sean, thank you so much for coming on. I really
appreciate you having me.
Guys, go check him out. Come on down to Raleigh if you haven't. If not, go order a rod to get yourself ready for the season. We are going to throw on the countdown clock, and we're going to have the next interview starting here everyone. We are back here at the Raleigh Fishing Show, the Bass and Saltwater Expo, Day 3, Part 2. It is 3 o'clock, and we're going to keep on rolling with our guests here. Mike, let me know how it all sounds there in the comment section down below. I am here with our next guest. Please introduce yourselves.
So, hey, I'm Dwayne Urie with Take a Warrior Fishing, and
I'm Ken Wells. I'm the Director of Warrior Relations and Services.
So, I mean, how'd you guys get into this organization?
so kind of a long story, but since you asked, I'll tell you. In 2021, I started a charter business on the lakes here in Raleigh.
Oh, cool.
And to help get my name out, I wanted to offer, you had to do promotion, so I did promotion doing the free fishing trips, and I specifically wanted to do it for the military. I got a lot more responses than I expected, and then a lot more that I could give a free trip to. So I'm like, what can I do to give more free fishing opportunities? And I started thinking, doing a lot of research. I'm like, you know what? I love the water. I love fishing. I know what it does to relax me, to soothe me. I wanted to do something to give more trips. So I'm going to do an event. So in November of 22, I started planning for an event in November 22. We called it Take a Warrior Fishing. I reached out to some bigger businesses if they would donate prizes. They asked me if we were a nonprofit. I said no, so they wouldn't donate. So I told myself if the event went well, we would make it a 501c3. So in November 22, we had 27 boats that took out 35 warriors fishing. And our events consist of 4 to 6 hours of fishing. They'll come back, weigh the fish, and then we will feed them and then give them prizes. That's how I did the first year. January of 23, we became an official 501c3, and we added 2 more events last year. So we did a kayak event, a bass event, and then our annual November event, which is the multiple species. And then in 23, we only have one. 24 is when we added the 2. And in November, so from November 22, our first year, we had 27 boats. This past year, we had 62 boats.
Damn.
So we've more than tripled.
Wow.
We were able to take 74 warriors. This year, we have 4 events. So we've added saltwater. I've moved to the coast now, so we've added saltwater. So we'll have a multi-species saltwater event. On April 19th, there'll be a bass event again. May 17th in Beaufort, North Carolina, will be a saltwater. September 27th will be a kayak event at the state's largest American Legion hut. They've got a pond, a big pond. And then November 1st will be our annual event. We call it Warrior Fishing is our big event. That'll be back in Sharon Harrison. Hopefully we'll have about 75 boats in that one.
How did you get into guiding?
So I'm prior Coast Guard. I didn't mention that part.
Oh, cool.
And my day job, I'm like, one day after COVID and a bunch of other stuff that I had to do with my job, I'm like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. So I decided I want to get on the water. So I went back, got my captain's license, and just got into the guiding. And it actually was just going to be pleasure. So I was doing pleasure stuff like tubing on days on the lake, sunset cruises, that kind of stuff. And then people were asking me to take them fishing. I'm like, all right. So we ended up doing fishing. And it's the way to get on the water, really. That's why I started it.
How did you get into the Coast Guard?
Law enforcement. So I went to college.
You keep making me have an extra question.
Yeah. So I went to college first. I played baseball in college, and when I went to college, I majored in criminal justice, and I wanted to work for the federal government. And it was pre 9/11, kind of same. Huh?
Catcher? Pitcher,
Pitcher.
really?
Yeah,
oh,
I was
wow.
a pitcher. Yeah, a little slimmer then. But so when I got out, I didn't have the right degree with no experience. So somehow I learned about the Coast Guard and how much law enforcement they do. So I went in the Coast Guard and got into law enforcement, and then realized I don't really want to do that for a career. So I got out and got in the safety and security field, and that's where I've been the rest of the career, in safety and security.
Wow, that's a journey, man.
That is a journey. It's been pretty cool, and the cool thing about Take a Warrior Fishing, and we're Take a Warrior Fishing Inc., is you get to meet a lot of great people. Like Ken, he's been. I just met him in person for the first time this weekend, but he has been one of our warriors since he started going to our events last year. He reached out to me. He's a retired Army. I let him talk to him by himself. But he reached out to me, said he wanted to help. That's what I need, somebody that wants to be here, because our benefit package can't really compete with the others because we don't pay anything or have no benefits. So we can't compete. But when I get people reaching out and say, I want to help, we had some I was revamping the board. It was just great timing, and he's on board now as the director of warrior relations, which means he is going to target the bases, the Moose Lodge, not the Moose Lodges, the American Legions, the VFWs. He's going to target the warriors that we can get into our fishing event. And we call them warriors because we target anybody that is honorably discharged or active duty. So I don't want to say we target veterans because that leaves the active duty out. We target everybody that wants to go fish that is in the military or has been in the military.
Ken, what's your memory of how you joined this?
Simple. So avid outdoorsman, avid fisherman that can't seem to catch any fish, but it's okay because, it's the experience, right?
Yeah.
And so I was online. I saw it on Facebook, Take a Warrior Fishing. I signed up, and Dwayne reached out to me. It was like, fly fishing. I thought it was fly fishing, but it wasn't. I met this guy. His name's Rich Hastings. He is a fish whisperer. So micro rod with what they call a trout magnet on the end of the string up there in the mountains. And invited my buddy. We ended up catching almost 25 to 30 trout a piece that day. And the feeling that I received from their mission statement on the webpage really hit home because it made me feel at ease. I was able to create a lasting relationship, and just the knowing how easy it was, the signing up, the communication between Dwayne and then Mr. Hastings, and then the meetup was just seamless. And so as it progressed, I retired Army. I did my time and retired. And now I'm a government employee. I was like, man, I want to see just where this goes. So then November come rolling around, this past November, and they had a tournament on Sharon Harris, which is literally right down the road. Oh, cool. So I signed up, Dwayne hooked me up with a boater captain. And then my buddy last minute signed up and ended up winning the whole dang thing.
Nice.
Last minute, the boater captain. I mean, just an amazing event. So I saw everything kind of work together. The envelope opened up for me, and I was like, man, I donate monthly because it's a great cause, And as a warrior, I got to share my experiences with others, and I have too much potential to sit there and be on the receiving end. And so that's when I got with Dwayne and was like, hey, man, this is what my qualifications are. This is what I'm able to do, and I want to be part of this organization because to me, it's more than just getting your name out there. I think for me, it's healing a soul that needs that connection, and vets and warriors in general, connection's a big thing. You're not the only one out there.
Backing up a little bit, are you a North Carolina native? Did you join the Army out of high school, out of college? Like, how did that all take place?
Yeah, so when I joined the Army, I joined when I was 17 out of Vermont. I know, it's a northerner, right?
You're a Vermont boy?
I am from Brattleboro, Vermont.
You're pretty far south now.
I am. And I love it. We're below the snow line, so that's great. But yeah, so I joined when I was 17, and then 24 years later, I retired out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I been in 32 different countries, 10 combat deployments all around the world. I don't know how my wife was able to keep the family together.
Respect, man.
Yeah,
my God.
It was time to hang up the boots for real, and it was an adjustment period because everything you do in the military is very systematic. So there's an adjustment. It took me about 3 years. That's a long time.
Wow. People don't talk about that enough.
But yeah, I mean, it's fun. It was good.
Yeah. But that adjustment period, like, I don't think that gets enough. Like, people don't understand that much. When you do something your whole life, if you're a student athlete and that's all you've known, and all of a sudden you don't have that anymore, you have to readjust your whole way of thinking, your pattern of behavior, like getting up in the morning. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And that's why I like this organization, because the warriors that we encounter all have that systematic mindset because they were in the military. So they know what it's like. It's like a regimented schedule that you follow by. And so meeting like-minded warriors is cool. And what's even better, and I know Dwayne, we love doing that. We love the banter between the services. Like, Coast Guard's better than an Army. Army's better than Air Force. And the Navy and the...
You heard what he said first. Coast Guard's better. He said that first.
See what I'm saying? That's the banter that we do. And only warriors can do that because we understand the mindset, and we don't take it personal. you know, because we all know who's better at the end of the day, Army. But, you know, it's all good. Life will go on. You know, the sun will rise and fall. But, yeah, so that's the story, man. It's been interesting.
So I do want to add one thing that he mentioned about Rich and the fishing. So we got two ways we get the Warriors on the water. One's our events, and the other is our online portal. So you're from Maryland or Virginia, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you want to go fishing in Maryland. You go to our website, you submit your information, I get it. I find boaters in your area. Whoever wants to go, the boater's available. Then I get the boater and the Warrior connected. They go fishing. Vice versa. You're a boater. You want to take a Warrior fishing. You send me a message. I go to the Warriors. Hey, Warriors, I got a boater in Maryland who wants to go. I get you connected as you go. The goal last year was to do 35 of those trips, and we ended up doing 157. So we tripled that.
Lord.
We got 315 Warriors on the water last year, with 157 being through the portal. So we're doing 50-50 between the portal and the events. He mentioned Rich Hastings. If you don't have a boat, it doesn't matter. Rich took out the most Warriors last year with 22. He doesn't own a boat. It was either fishing streams in the mountains, surf fishing on the coast, or the pier fishing is how he was able to get those folks out. So just because you don't have a boat doesn't mean you can't help. And he's experienced it with his fishing trips, and he mentioned it a little bit. The reason we do it, and I'll speak for him for this, is at the events, I don't get to experience it on the one-on-ones because I don't get to see the folks. But the events, when the folks come up to you, shake your hand, tell you how much they appreciate it, how much it's helped them. I had one guy that texted me recently and said it was the best day of his life because he got to go saltwater fishing. So that's the reason you do it. It opens up an opportunity. A lot of folks, and when I say folks, I'm guys and girls, if they're in the military, they've had a traumatic experience, they may not want to open up. They get on the water, they start fishing, they start feeling a connection with that boater, they will eventually start opening up. I would say over 50% of our boaters are also military. So that's another connection that we have. And yesterday we had a guy that volunteered as a boater that came to our booth. He told me that the boater he took, or the Warrior he took with him, they're now best friends, and they talk every day. So that's the reason why we do what we do.
How do you pick an event location? Is that a year in advance, 2 years in advance, the day of? Like, how do you go into all
when
that?
I first started, it was like, hey, I know this lake, let's do it here. So it will always be at Sharon Harris Lake. Okay. Because that's where I started it. So it will always be there in November-ish time frame. Because we work full-time, we in addition to this, and we're all volunteers, we have to be mindful of the calendar. So we do have a director of events with Chelsea Sandrick, and we did set the calendar for 25 later in 24. So my goal is to expand through Southeast United States. The more we think about it, I don't know how much expansion out of North Carolina we will do with the events, and the reason is you've got this area here with one of the largest, if not the largest, Army bases. Is it the largest in the world?
Population, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Wow,
Fort Liberty, Fort Bragg. Wow. And then between here and the coast, you've got Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. You get to the coast, you got Camp Lejeune Marine Base. You got New River Air Station. You got Cherry Point Air Station. You got the Coast Guard Base. You got Elizabeth City, which is the largest Coast Guard base in the state. So we have so many opportunities that we can touch military here. I don't know if we need to expand with the events. Now, with the portal, we've already put fishing with Warriors in 7 different states. So we can still touch folks out of North Carolina. Right now, we just can't expand events-wise because if we could do it, we do it every weekend.
So for Sharon Harris, just knowing, we've talked about that once or twice this weekend. Yeah. Is there going to be a size cap when you don't want 100,000 people on that lake?
So,
is that you're young now, but is that in the back of your head?
That part is not, because I'm getting folks like Ken and other folks that's joined, John, that have helped us, and Pete. Who else am I leaving out? Don. Wayne, Max, they help me. That's no concern. What regulates that is when we do it at a wildlife ramp. The wildlife stipulates the permit size of how many boats you can have.
Gotcha.
So if we stay at a wildlife, that's going to tell us. Our saltwater event is at a private marina, so there's no cap.
Nice.
So it just depends on where we are.
If you have to get if you had to go with the wildlife permitting, is that like a year in advance you have to get the permit? In Maryland, it's like a year in advance you have to get the permit.
Yeah, so for November, I submitted it like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
But that does give you at least a buffer so you know how many
Yeah.
people to be signed up. So if
Yeah.
somebody is in Maryland and wants to come down and I submit, am I going to be getting a thing in the mail, an email? Like, how would all that work
So
if I
once
signed
you
up?
submit your information online, someone right now, you'll get an email. We're working on building our website where you'll actually get a connection. For lack of better ways to describe it, because I don't know this site, but I've been told that Tinder, when you create a profile, you create a profile. Kenneth creates a profile, and if there's a connection, then it connects. If there's some type of coincidence or whatever, you connect. That's how we're going to do our profile or our website.
Based off interest.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
yeah. So right now is you submit, you get an email, you get a
Okay.
confirmation, and then we send email blast, or we've got a Facebook page that you can go on, and we do stuff on Facebook as well.
Oof.
But
man.
we're also expanding. So like, just created a YouTube channel. We're gonna
Nice.
start. I'm like a how do I say this? I love computer technology, and I love technology, and I got all this stuff to do it with.
Cool.
So trying to do that, create a podcast, kind of like what we're doing here.
Right on.
And just baby steps, because that's how you start.
Yep.
And so getting the information out is the biggest thing. We did one of our first live Facebook feeds just maybe an hour ago, and just off that first time, 6 views. Like, I know it's 6, but we didn't have 6 before.
Yeah.
So that's a start. It opens up a door. It allows so much more possibility to happen.
Yes.
And that's what I love. I love possibility. 100%.
So did you want to promote the YouTube channel now? I know it's in its infancies, but if you want to, go for it. What's the link to get
So
to it?
right now, there's nothing on there except for a photo and a background drop. There is our description.
Very
It is
new.
very new, but it's Take a Warrior Fishing. All you gotta do is type it in on the search, and once we get it linked and get going, and we add it to our the website and also Facebook, same thing. We're gonna copy and paste the link to our public Facebook thing. Also, once it's really cool. And I don't think Dwayne mentioned it, but on our once you sign up as a warrior, whether a boat captain or the warrior themselves, you also are going to be encouraged to join our private Facebook page.
Nice.
Okay, so we have the public Facebook page, but we have a private Facebook page. And there's really no difference between the two. The information flow is still going. And I think what it comes down to is just that some people just don't need to know certain things about things, As with the public, we're not hiding anything. It's just kind of like a little perk, I guess you would say, for being part of the team.
Guys, thank you. I think we've covered so much in such a short period of time. Is there anything else that we need to make sure we let the public know about?
In addition to the YouTube, I'd like to do a plug for our website and then our social media. So the website is warriorfishing.org. We are an official 501c3, so any donations that come to us is tax deductible. So warriorfishing.org is our website. Our social media with Instagram and Facebook is Take a Warrior Fishing Inc. So that's both Facebook and Instagram. I think he mentioned about doing a TikTok, which is all him. I don't know what that will be, but those are definitely the 3 right now. And once YouTube gets up, is how we get our information out.
Guys, thank you so much for coming on. I think, again, guys, please go check them out and support them. I really appreciate the time that you had today. Guys, our next guest will be coming on at 3:30 or whenever they yell at me that they're coming on. So we're going to take a quick 10-minute break, and we're going to be back with our next guest here at the Raleigh Fishing Expo, day number 3, part 2. And then I hit the wrong button like I always. to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas. So, with that said, I'm going to go with our next guest right here. Sir, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So, Victor, I mean, how did you get involved in the outdoors group that you're with right now?
So, I've been saltwater fishing or fishing in general basically all of my life. How I ended up coming up with the Anchor 911 concept is we were in Virginia Beach fishing on the James River for croaker. And we were out right next to the James River Bridge. We were drifting along, and what I noticed is all the people that were anchored up were catching big giant croakers. Everybody that was drifting were catching the little smaller fish. So we set out our anchor so we could join in on the catching, and I couldn't get my anchor to hold. And being, relatively new to anchoring, I didn't realize that your chain was what aided you in helping achieve your anchoring spot. So we drifted through 3 or 4 times, and finally I got frustrated. I pulled back to the boat ramp. It was a West Marine about 1.5 miles away. Drove up to the West Marine. I bought an anchor, $120, came back, and when I put that anchor out, it didn't have any chain, but it held. It was a huge anchor. And we joined in on the catching. As soon as the boat stopped, we immediately started catching, nice 1.5 pound, 2 pound croakers. Well, fast forward 2 weeks later, I'm back at home. The striper run in Lake Gaston coming up in the river portion. We're out there striper fishing. Throw my anchor out, the anchor up. We get hung up. So I find myself leaving there at the end of the day, cutting a rope to a $120 anchor. Well, I end up tying a drink bottle on it. Went back and talked to a friend about it, and he gave me a little ring made out of rebar. Went back the next evening, dropped that down on the rope. In no time, I was a little disappointed because it happened so fast. If I'd known it was going to happen that quick, I would have got some bait so we could fish. But in no time, I had the anchor, loose. And it got me thinking, and I started on a 20-year quest to make this adaptable to, a normal boating anchor. And so that's basically how I arrived at that. Over a lot of period of time, I've given some thought. I was trying to make one device that would work for every anchor. I finally figured out that wasn't going to be possible. So I ended up coming with the idea of coming up with 2 different ones. And so this is one that I have here that fits on a fluke style anchor. And this one goes on a plow or a claw style anchor, which is this here. What it does, it slides. If you get hung where it's hung here, you drive over top of it and it allows you to pull it back. And that's really cool. The funny thing that I've noticed about anchoring is when I set my anchor, I catch a lot more fish. That's what it's all about at the end of the day is, trying to catch more fish and, be more relative to it. So I see when the boat stops, you're able to concentrate on one area. If you're off a little bit, you'll need to move. And of course, that's when you end up with your issues with your anchor getting hung. And it's just been a lifelong quest since then with anchor fishing. And enjoy, grouper fishing, red snapper fishing, and it's a lot more productive when you anchor your boat up.
How long did it take you to go from in your head to a product you could sell?
So it was 20 years from the first time I thought about doing this. I got hot and heavy with it somewhere about 2019. As I aged over 20 years, it started upsetting me that I had done nothing with this idea. But I started tinkering with it and making it, and I came up with this idea, pretty quick. But it took me a little while to come up with this format. But once I got this one done, I ended up figuring out that it wasn't going it wasn't one wasn't going to work for both of them. So that's when they ended up coming up with the two styles. I started in the patent process about time that COVID started. So that seemed to delay everything. I applied for my patent in December of 2020. That's when I officially filed for the patent on it. It took about 3 years for me to get the patent back. Then I also filed for the trademark on Anchor 911.
Wow. The patent process has got to be gnarly.
So it is, and I did sort of the unconventional way. I put a lot of the legwork in it myself, but I did hire a patent attorney. I felt like that was the best way to go to cover that. The biggest thing is everybody thinks because you own a patent, you have something, but you still have to reach out to anglers, let them know that you have a product. I've got to make people realize that, there is this product that helps out. A lot of people use zip ties, and like I said, zip ties is a great way. What they'll do is they'll hook the chain back here in the back of the anchor, and then at the front of the anchor, they'll clip on with a zip tie. You set the anchor, it works just like it normally would. If it gets hung, when you yank on it with enough force, it'll pop the zip tie and hook the anchor. So one of the issues you have with that, you always need to have your anchor prepared when you're going in and out of inlets. You have a boat to break down in the middle of an inlet, you need to stay off the breakers or the rocks or wherever you're at. And I wouldn't want a zip tie, trusting my life into it. But this right here, I would be fine setting out. I know that's going to set every time and it's not going to fail on me. If you were in an inlet and had your anchor zip tied and that zip tie broke, then you basically got to bring it back in and reset it with, this is more of a safety feature.
Gotcha. What's the best size chain to be using for something like that?
So it's a lot of misconceptions out there. A lot of the old stuff says that you needed 1 pound of anchor for every foot of boat that you had. So if, say for instance, if you have a 27-foot boat, you need a 27-pound anchor. Okay. Same thing with chain. Is people refer how many that you need to have a foot of chain for the length of the boat. Okay. What I found with my situation, I found that if you take the length of your boat, the weight of your anchor, and the weight of your chain to equal the length of your boat, especially with the modern anchors, the fluke style, the new plow style, the delta plow style, the claw style, in that situation, you'll be able to anchor with a 2-to-1 ratio with a rope. So that sort of, branches off and simplifies it a lot. So your old ship type anchors, they were very correct in that you needed a foot, of anchor. And just say if you had a 27, they said a 27-pound anchor and a 27-pound chain. Well, that's fine and dandy until you have to pull it off the bottom. So the lighter chain and lighter anchor that you can get away with, especially if you've got to hand pull it, it's going to work better for you. Now, heavier is always better when it comes to holding power, but your chain is your main focus. And what your chain does is your chain keeps the anchor running parallel to the seafloor so that the points will set. If you pull on an anchor, if just say for instance we had a rope here, that rope is not going to sink down, it's going to come tight. What it's going to try to do, it's going to pick your anchor up and have your anchor running across the seafloor like that.
Gotcha.
So your chain is just as valuable as what your anchor is, but like I said, with my equation that I came up with, that half of the length of the boat in weight, not necessarily length, because at the end of the day, what we're wanting this to do is when we're dragging this along, we want this chain to stay in contact with the seafloor to make this anchor dig into the bottom.
Interesting. Okay. That's fascinating. How has the spot lock trolling motor, how does that rotate into the repertoire of when would you anchor versus if you had a spot lock trolling motor, when would you use that?
Yes. So and as they get more pronounced with the spot locks, first started out, it was just basically the smaller boats that were using them, but now they've come out to where they're anchoring, 30-foot catamarans with them. And they're absolutely great. The downside of them is you basically need that power, that battery power to use them. And some of them have 3, 4 batteries on them. Well, then they come out with the lithium batteries that are a lot lighter. that they don't take up as much weight, and you're able to do a whole lot more with less. Now, if you have twin or triple engines, one motor is left running while you're anchored, and then that actually charges your batteries to keep you running longer. So, very few people anchoring if they have spot lock. But at some point in time, you're limited to the amount of battery life that you have. Just say if you go out offshore fishing, most batteries are they're gonna run with the spot lock 3 to 4 hours. The other thing is if you're in a heavy swell or a heavy chop, your trolling motor coming in and out of the water, it wants to adjust. So, but spot lock is definitely a great item to have.
But it's not perfect for all situations.
It's not perfect for all situations, just like anchoring is not perfect. And a lot of your spot lock systems, you're in $3,500 to $5,000. And with your anchoring system, you can buy a decent anchor and a chain most of the time for around $120, $150
wow.
with your rope.
And what about these other products right here, if you want to show them off to the camera?
So this here is the fluke style. And a fluke style anchor, I don't have a display with me, but a fluke style is universal. So what that means is when that anchor goes down, if it flips upside down, it still sets the same way because the fins or the flukes on it, will shift down. Well, the reason this won't work on a fluke anchor because it flips upside down. Now, see what we've got to do to get it to the back. With the fluke style anchor, this will rotate around to both sides. So this would be the way you would retrieve it. If you flip the anchor over, it's still going to retrieve the same way.
That's clever. Okay.
So very simple. So they don't really have a lot of anchor rescue devices on the market. I think I'm familiar with 2, and they use pieces that you have to break or have to reset. My system is fully resettable. You don't need to buy anything extra from it. Everything's made with 316 grade stainless steel, so you'll have some spots of rust to form at times. One of the biggest questions I get is about the pins that are in here, and these pins are actually made with 3/16 as well. Maybe 4 or 5 years, depending on how much you use it, you may need to look at replacing them. But this should be a one and done system, for your anchor. It'll make your retrieval time a lot less if you're hung up. And then, of course, you get your anchor back, you get your chain back, and you get your rope back. So you don't lose any of the 3 of them.
Victor, that is fascinating. If people would love to take and buy one of your products, where can they go?
So anchor911.com. I sell them online. It's a list of my products that's online. Even have a few other things that I usually show. It shows things that you would use while you're anchor fishing. Chummers, I buy them. So I'm a dealer for Leaf Fisher Sports out of Florida. So I buy my chummers from them. Chumming device. That's this tube here. It comes pre-rigged with rope with a cap on it. Put your chum in it. Now you don't have to anchor up, but what I found is when you anchor up, this is one of the things that's a game changer. When you're out fishing, it helps disperse your fish or disperse your scent. Put your bait in it, and you got a nice slots where you can slice it. You don't have to take all the messy bait out, to do that. We got that on Anchor 911 as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I do mark rope. One of the things I like to do when I anchor up is use mark rope. The mark rope gives me an idea of how far I'm away. So on my anchoring system, with 27-foot boat, we're talking about a 13-pound anchor, 14 pounds of chain, okay? If we're going to anchor on 100 foot of water, we need a minimum of 200 foot of rope. So I've taken rope and marked it in 25-foot increments. That way when we're out dropping the anchor, we can sort of keep track of where our anchor's at. And then if we've marked a spot where we know the fish is at, and we end up, 30 foot from it, we can let out 30 foot of rope to get us back. We can keep an idea of how we get back with that. One of the things that I've enjoyed doing fishing is moving around over the reef. Cut the wheel one direction, it'll move the boat this side. You cut it the other direction, it'll move it that side. Pull in some rope or let out some rope to move around the reef wherever you're getting the best marks at. while I'm anchor fishing, I like to run a free line, take a live bait, put out on a float. And this is a cork. Now, I don't sell these, but it's just one of the things that has been a game changer for me with fishing. Snap on your line, pop your line in right here, set your free bait out, and I catch dolphin, cobia. We've even caught sailfish running free lines out of the back of the boat while we're anchored up. Not necessarily just bottom fishing, but that allows us to fish for pelagics on the top. The main reason we fish like that is for king mackerel, but get blackfin tuna to show up. Everything will show up on top that you normally would catch without trolling. Another thing I enjoy about trolling or anchoring up is when I go out trolling and I'm not successful and I anchor up, usually I catch fish when I anchor up. Even the pelagics up on top by using, this same type system.
Victor, no, I really appreciate your time. Guys, please go check them out. This is an absolute game changer when it comes to anchor management. Go grab one of those and a chum bag. And then, again, where are your other shows that you're going to be at this year? What other shows?
So I'm doing a nautical flea market in Pompano Beach, Florida. That's next weekend. The following weekend, I will be in Vero Beach, Florida. And then the middle of February, I'll be at the Alamorada Nautical Flea Market at the show there. So that's out on the Key West or heading down toward Key West. And in the end of March, we're looking at going to Connecticut and doing a boating show in Connecticut.
Victor, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Guys, go help support these local vendors. It really means the world to them. Let me tell you guys what's coming up here. We're going to be taking a quick commercial break. 4 p.m. is the next guest. 4 p.m. is the next guest. So guys, go fill up at this point. It's about 3 p.m. Go fill up your wine glass or your scotch glass. Relax a little bit. We got a couple more fantastic guests to talk about. And if you'd like to, in the episode description, go check me out on Patreon. If it wasn't for all the Patreon supporters, none of this would be possible. Link in the episode description if you'd like to help donate to that. I believe we're only taking 29 more members for the year 2025 before we shut it down to any more. So, quick little break, and I will see you guys shortly. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Everyone doing this evening. It is 4 p.m. here. We are at the Raleigh Expo, Bass Fishing and Saltwater Expo, Day 3, Part 2. We survived the weather that came in on Friday and people driving in the snow here in North Carolina. Me as a Northern Virginia boy, it was interesting to see the way people reacted to a half inch of snow, but God bless all of you. We've made it here, and I have our next guest right here, a striper guy, something that I really wanted to talk about more because that is another part of this crazy web that we call fishing, whether it's catfish, redfish, speckled trout, of course bass eats up a lot of the market share. Wes, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
How did you get involved in this?
My dad was a fisherman. I was lucky to be introduced by a father who carried me fishing. Grew up on Carr Lake, fished a lot. Had a passion for it at a really young age, bass fished, and then really got into striper fishing, and so I just wanted to start teaching people things that were taught to me by my dad.
Did you have a moment when you're like, I wanted to pursue this more as not just a hobby, but guiding?
Well, I just kind of saw a market for it, I felt like, several years ago, and so I went and got my captain's license and said, I'm going to try it. I mean, I work a full-time job, but it's a nice side gig to have. So it just kind of, we're new at it, but just kind of starting to take off now. So, just trying to get our name out there.
What is it about striper? Why was that the fish that spoke to you?
I don't know. It's just a fight in a striper. It's a different fight. I mean, they all fight, no matter if you catch them in saltwater or freshwater. A big striper all kind of fight the same, but I don't know, the head shake is something. I mean, it's a different fight than any fish I've ever caught,
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about the best striper lakes around here, is bugs, or where I'm from in Virginia, we call it bugs, but Carr, is that the standard in the area, or is that just the one that has that people talk about the most?
I think people talk about the most. Our lake in the 70s and 80s was really, really good with some really, really big fish. They were ocean fish who got landlocked when they built the dam, and a lot of them got fished out. They were sold illegally. They were caught and sold for imitation crab meat. They went to the Outer Banks, and then they went up the coast and ended up north and getting big money for them. And so our lake was unique because it was one of the few lakes a striper could spawn in, go upriver. And we have a stock fish now fishery. There's still some native fish who were born there able to spawn, but it really produced some really big fish. And, it kind of went through several years where it wasn't doing as well. And the last several years with our stocking program, it has done really, really well. And we're starting to get some really healthy, really nice fish. Will we ever have the 20-pound fish? I don't know.
And that's something I'm glad you touched on, is the fact that striper not everywhere can spawn naturally. And
Correct.
I don't think people are aware of that. Is Carr a certain place where that actually can happen?
It can happen. Now, you got to have a perfect water flow, everything coming in from the Staunton and the Dan River feeding it. We've had some natural spawns within the last few years, according to the biologists have told us, but it all depends on your water flow coming in. Now, our stock fish, they don't know how to go upriver. They're going to go back to wherever they were released to spawn, but they're going to lay, but they're not going to hatch. So the ones that know how to go upriver, if it's the right water flow to roll the eggs a certain amount, yes, they will spawn in Bugs Island or Carr Lake,
So with all
I caught a fish 2 years ago, never caught one before, with a tag in it on my end of the lake that, I hate to say my end, the end I live on, which is the Carolina end down near White Point. And I called the tag in, and that fish had gone through the hatchery in Brookneal, Virginia 2 weeks before. So that fish had gone through the hatchery.
Wow.
So it was a male, a blue tag, and I called it in. It said it was a male fish. So yes, they still spawn.
You say you live on the lake and you've been there fishing your whole life. What changes have you seen when it comes to like the bait fish populations and just little
The blueback
trends?
heron, when they took over, it really changed our fishery. We used to have a big population of gizzard shad. We don't seem to have that population of gizzard shad anymore. We have mostly blueback herring and thread fins. And I'm a live bait fisherman. It can make catching bait really tough at times. I wish we did have a gizzard shad population like we used to have, but we just don't right now. Don't really know what has happened in the last several years with it. I mean, our fish are healthy, but they're saying they get more protein, whatever a fish needs, out of gizzard shad, and we just don't have a lot of them anymore.
It's interesting because I feel like striper and blueback are synonymous. Generally speaking, a lot of the good striper reservoirs, and I could be a mistake, chat, help me out here, they have blueback and striper, and that's that weird dichotomy. But how did the behavior of striper change when blueback became the primary forage?
Well, as a kid, not a kid, a teenager, we used to catch a lot of fish on points and humps. Even in the wintertime, throwing a plug called a hairy worm, was a bucktail. And our fish still go to the banks, but a gizzard shad, you could see them in the spring flipping on the edge, and we knew those fish were going to the banks. Now, don't get me wrong, our fish will still go to the banks on the herring spawn. When those herring go up there to spawn in those bushes, our fish go to the banks, but it just don't see the fish. We don't catch them in the places that we did years ago. They still do some of the same thing, but they really relate to those herring shad. Wherever they travel, it's where the fish are going. Bass, striper, a lot of it, you know.
What does water temperature do to striper in the lake? Do they have a perfect water temperature they like to follow up and down in the water level?
Well, this time of year, our water now is probably in the 40s. Striper will follow the thermocline a lot, especially in the summer. So a lot of people say, when it's hot, fish go deep. Our fish go shallow in the summer. Our fish will move from 50, 40, 50, 60 foot of water to 20 and 30 foot of water in the heat of the summer. It's where the thermocline is the best, and it's where they're just trying to survive. It's what they're trying to do. And we actually mark our thermocline, our sonars actually, and people, I'm sure people know, but you can actually mark your thermocline. It comes, this year for some reason is really, really strong this summer. So as that thermocline's moving, those fish are kind of staying, especially in the dog days of summer. Those fish go really shallow due to the thermocline moving.
So when it becomes July-ish and it gets super hot like that, do the fish become inactive, or what do they do in the hotter months?
They can be. They move in what we call holes. They'll move in a 30-foot hole, and it's hard a lot of times to catch a limit of fish. If you got 3 or 4 people on the boat, to catch 12, 16 fish out of one bunch of fish. You don't mark many fish. They're there. They're just kind of laying there. They don't feed as hard. Our fish look kind of poor in the summer. They're just not feeding as hard as they do winter, spring.
Interesting.
And then once it gets really hot, it's like they kind of, we still catch them. Some of our best fishing, we just have to find a lot of bunches of fish. Not every day, but a lot of days to catch limits of fish.
When would you consider like the primary season for striper fishing months?
All year is good. I really like November, December, January. I know people are leery for cold weather, but it's some of the best fishing. We can catch and release, because in the summertime, if you throw them back, a lot of times, and I'm sure people will argue with you, but when that water gets 85, 90 degrees and pulling fish out 30 foot of water, it's hard for them to survive. Wintertime, we're able to catch and release, chasing birds, and we have some really, really good days. Don't let the cold weather discourage you from going fishing. It is and our fish are beautiful and fat. They're feeding hard right now. is a great time of year to fish.
When you're chasing bird schools, how close do you want to get the boat before you set it down and to get?
I like to get not quite within cast. I'll start slowing down, I don't know, 100 yards before I get to the birds. And then when I stop the boat, I want to be pretty close within casting distance of those birds. I don't like to, you're right, run in those birds and run them out. I like to ease into those birds, especially if the birds aren't moving. The fish are there. There's no need to go flying in there, you know. Couple 100 yards to 100 yards, kind of idling there, put trolling motor down when you're getting close within casting distance and kind of let everything settle down, you know. I mean, if they're on the move, I don't mind moving with them, but you're right. You don't want to run in the middle of a school of fish, you know.
Yeah, it's hard because I see that with bass guys when they see a school busting, and they want to set their ass down like right in the middle of them, and immediately that's going to compress the school.
Right.
And I think that's when casting distance and pegging your cast is so important. But you mentioned moving, and I just know from my bass guys with forward-facing sonar is those suckers move a lot.
Right.
I mean, how do you keep up with them? Or how much?
Good electronics.
Electronics?
Yeah, good electronics. The way we side scan's really, really good for us. Looking out, you know, 100, 150, 160 feet. That's kind of, because we pull planer boards a lot, it's kind of how we're keeping up with them. But when a striper decides to move, I don't think it's anything out there that can catch him. When he decides to go, that school, they go. And we don't know. This time, in summertime, they'll scatter out some. A lot of times this time of year, when they make that move, they're gone. I mean, I don't know how fast they go, but we can't keep up with them, you know.
How much time do you give a school before you bounce?
Do what?
How much time do you give a school of fish before you move to find another school?
I mean, if they're biting, or if it's still some scattered fish there, I mean, sometimes we can sit in a school of fish an hour. Sometimes you can catch 2 or 3 and they're gone. And if we're not marking it on side scan, we're going to look for some more fish. You know, I mean, it kind of varies, but I'm not going to sit there long. You know, if I'm not catching anything, seeing anything, I'm up and gone. You know.
No, that makes so much sense. Do you just try to target Kerr, or how is the Roanoke River chain as a whole when you got Gaston, Roanoke River, Roanoke Rapids, and then the Roanoke River itself? I fish Gaston. I fish behind the dam there in the spring of the year, and I fish it summer too. And from what I've seen, it's some beautiful, catch some really nice fish there. I pull fish live bait in the river. Only been to Weldon a few times in my life. Don't really want to deal with the crowd. I'm not gonna lie. It's that bad?
Yeah, I mean, from what videos I watch and hearing, and you know, I guess I don't think it was a season there this year at all. But Gaston's a really good fishery also. I should learn it more than I do. I just kind of started messing with it 3 or 4 years ago, but from what I've seen, really beautiful fish, even in the heat of the summer there also.
It seems overlooked for bass and striper, honestly.
Right, yeah. It's well, of course, and I catch a lot of bass even in the summertime in the river. Some really nice bass the way we fish.
Wow.
At times I see where Gaston produces a bigger fish than bugs, you know.
Interesting.
In the spring, I've never caught one 20 pounds out of car. Probably not. I'm not going to say, I'm sure some in there. Never hear of 120. I'm pretty sure it's probably still a 20-pounder left in Gaston. I feel like that you have a chance of catching 15 to 20-pound fish in Gaston in the spring of the year.
That's pretty big.
You know.
That's insane. That's a big one, because I know like Smith Mountain up near Raleigh, that brings out some mega ones too.
Yeah. They have some really, and we fish that also. Fish it kind of the same way. We fish that several times a year and live bait it, pulling planer boards. And I mean, I caught a fish up there last year. I don't know what he weighed. He was almost 42 inches, a 20 some pound fish. But it's like I said, it's I feel like Gaston can still produce. I mean, I know of some fish being caught down there last year in the 16, 17 pound range that were actually weighed, put on a set of scales, and not, looking at. So,
you mentioned planer boards a couple of times. Is that the primary way that you're targeting these fish?
Spring of the year, spring and winter. Yes, I'm pulling boards on the bank, depending on our water flow, especially a flooded. A lot of water in the spring, it can be really good pulling boards up next to the bushes on that herring. We're just following that herring spawn.
Yeah.
It's what we're doing. Summertime, we're more fishing a down rod, 2 to 3 ounce weight, Carolina rig, and a school of fish. Is what we're doing. Riding high speed, looking for fish, really good electronics, really good transducer, and that's how they've been doing it for years on Carl. One of the few lakes that people riding 20, 30 miles an hour marking with a depth finder.
Wow.
Guys still use the old flasher type depth finders, and we found a transducer that seems to work with our graphs that we can mark fish at really high speed now.
Did you said a Carolina rig, like a bottom bumping Carolina rig?
Yes, but we don't let it, of course, to the bottom. Our fish will, especially live baiting, a lot of our fish will suspend early summer, and then when they go in those holes, like I'd said, the fish, if you're in 30 foot, we catch a lot of fish 20 to 25 foot. Just get them to come off the bottom a little bit. We let the bait out. Problem is, bait dies so quick because of the thermocline. You got to have a lot of bait,
How important is it to be alive versus dead, the bait?
I'm not going to say I've never caught one dead on a boat, on a dead shad, but I don't think I've ever caught a striper on a dead shad on a boat. And I don't understand guys fish from the bank, catch them on a dead shad.
Yeah.
It's very confusing to me. We want our shad very lively, really good bait tanks, and we feel like we need a very lively shad, and it's crazy. I don't. And the wintertime, I have caught them on cut bait before, but as far as a dead shad in the dog days of summer, I've never caught one that I know of. And I'm sure some people say, well, I've caught plenty. I never have,
Yeah, that's fascinating to me because it's just they seem like they want to chase. They want the liveliness of it.
Yeah.
Because like with the catfishermen, I know blue cats, they'll take a dead bait, but like a flatty, it has to be alive for them to get their attention.
Yeah. And I've seen a shad that's been hit, not moving well, still won't touch them. I mean,
really?
It's crazy. I don't know. It's kind of like fishing from a bank, see how far you can throw out. Fishing from a boat, see how close you can throw the bank. Don't make a lot of sense.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
But no, I know what you mean there. Another thing you mentioned was electronics. Have you dabbled with yet forward-facing sonar at all?
I have everything. I joke around and tell everybody I'm not that sorry of a fisherman, but I'm just joking.
Yeah.
The way I fish forward-facing sonar, I haven't seen where it be an advantage. The way I fish, I am not against it. It would be a big advantage to me catching bait.
Oh, I didn't think of that. That's smart.
So I have everything. I'm thinking about buying another boat, so that's why I don't know if I want to put everything on my boat. But as far as the way that I fish, I'm sure casting to them like I like to do, just by myself, messing around, fishing points, yes, it would work. But I've gone with people doing it. It has shown me a lot of fish I can't catch, and I didn't like it.
Interesting. Yeah.
But
the cast net thing, though, is brilliant.
Yeah,
because it would be to lead it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so a lot of guys do it, so I think I'm missing out by not using it to catch bait.
Yeah. Time saver.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, but as far as the way I fish, nothing wrong with it. I'm not against forward facing, but I just haven't seen where it would be an advantage to me.
What have you noticed anecdotally a relationship when you're striper fishing and catching bass? It's interesting how they can commingle sometimes.
Yeah, especially spring of the year. When we start, like I was talking to a guy here earlier at a booth that, a bass fisherman, and I said, I ask a lot of bass fishermen, when I see them at a boat ramp, especially February, March, April, hey, did you catch any stripers? And, some of them look at me like, no, I'm bass fishing. I'm like, if you're throwing a crankbait on call or a jerkbait, you're going to catch a striper.
Wow.
Once they go to those banks, they move with the bass. A striper will relate to structure, I've noticed. Not a lot of stumps, but some stumpy flat, stumpy points. So yes, I've seen them. We catch a lot of bass striper fishing in the spring of the year. A lot. Talking about Smith Mountain, we had a phenomenal day catching smallmouth, pulling live bait on planer board, striper fishing.
I've heard those rumors so freaking much.
I mean,
of mega smallmouth bass caught by striper fishermen.
Huge, and I mean, almost 7 pounds one of them because we waited.
Jeez,
I mean,
crazy.
seriously, yes, we do catch a lot of by mistake, of course, but yes, they do. We're fishing the same places a lot of the bass fishermen are also fishing. You know.
Do they have a hierarchy in the school? Is it usually, I know for bass at least, it's you got to get the bait past the small ones to get to the bigger ones. Is that the same hierarchy striper do?
Yeah. I've noticed that a lot in the summer. If you can get your bait down through, if you're in 40 foot of water and it's fished from 20 to the bottom, if you can get it to the bottom, a lot of times you'll catch a nicer fish down towards the bottom. I think maybe they're a little lazier and want the rest of them. They're eating kind of what's left, which also goes back into they're eating a dead shad. But
yeah,
I don't.
No, they got personalities.
I contradicted myself on that one, so I don't know.
No, Wes. I mean, I really appreciate you coming on here at the Raleigh Expo. Again, could you let people know at home how they can book a trip with you?
They can book a trip through Doubled Up Guide Service. We're on Facebook. Follow us on Facebook. I'm Captain Wes Langston, and my buddy is Captain Shane Massey. He runs his boat. I run my boat. You can follow us on Instagram. Like I said, look us up. Be more than happy to carry you.
There you have it, guys. Go check him out. Go learn a little bit more about striper fishing and some of the best striper lakes in the area. What we're going to be doing, we got one more break before we do our wrap-up show for the evening here at the Raleigh Expo. Again, go check him out. Hang in tight, guys. We're going to be back real quick. righty, everybody. We are back here to finish out our time here at now this is our first time, honestly, at the Raleigh Expo, the Bass and Saltwater Fishing Expo Extravaganza. We've really tried to do the best we can to pump out as much content as possible for you all, to really give you an idea of the vendors that are here, these hardworking people that make all of this possible for you. It's been fun. It's been an absolute blast to be down here. The fishing culture here in North Carolina is definitely something I want to start dabbling in more and more. It's fascinating to me how much this place is overlooked when it comes to the bigger media streams, because there is no Lake Hartwell and places like that, and it's a shame because there's so many cool hidden fisheries and a lot of passionate people down here in this area. If you missed it, don't worry. We are going to be at the Richmond Expo next weekend. We're going to be at the Richmond Fishing Expo next weekend. That is January 17th through the 19th. That is January 17th through the 19th. I believe the doors open at 9 a.m. on Friday. Fishing the DMV is going to be booth 109. Fishing the DMV is going to be booth 109. It's going to be an absolute blast. We're going to be doing some meet and greet times for my Patreon members and for people that want to come by. I'm going to be posting those times later on this week again. So if you want to come by and say hi and chill, Richmond's going to be one of our big meetup times. If you want to come say hi to me, talk fishing, again, we're going to be listing those times that you can do meet and greet as well. So, and for people that want to get a hold of me, just to talk fishing or whatever, you can reach to me on Instagram. You can also reach to me on Facebook. My email is fishingthedmv@gmail.com. And if you would like to, I'd really appreciate it. Become a Patreon member. The link is in the episode description to every platform that you're on. We're only accepting 29 more Patreon member spots for the foreseeable future right now. I'm trying to keep it a tight-knit club. Tons of great benefits, private Facebook group, a lot of great discounts, and of course we have our online fishing tournaments. We have 5 to 6 we do each year. The next one coming up is the Frostbite Frenzy. The Frostbite Frenzy will be going all the way from January 25th through March 16th, and I'm going to be giving away, I think it's like $1,700 in cash prizes, for that event. But the only way you can get to these events, since I fund it myself, is you have to be a Patreon member to sign up. And I'm only going to be taking 29 more members, and then that door is going to be shut. So whatever new benefits I get as this stuff grows, you can lock in all the great rates, the discounts, the fishing tournaments, the private Facebook group, and so much more, including all the Patreon meetups we're going to be doing in 2025. So please go check me out on Patreon and support me. That's the only reason we're able to do everything that we do here. And then otherwise, guys, please, thank you so much for watching everything and being here from Friday all the way till now. I really appreciate all of you guys, and we'll see you guys next week on Fishing the DMV. And if you want to, our next our next major episode comes out tomorrow morning. We're doing DC catfishing, I believe, and then I'll be doing some other things throughout the week. But if not, I'll see you bright and early Friday morning at the Richmond Fishing Expo. See you later, everyone. Bye.